Assalamualaikum, मेरा नाम कमाल मीर है. I want to welcome you on behalf of LUMS, Shakya Metropolitan School of Humanities and Social Sciences, and of the Debating Society of LUMS. और ये before we start this debate, which is the fourth and final debate of the year, and if the previous three debates are anything to go by, this one also promises to be a tracker of the debate. Now, before we start, and I introduce our illustrious speakers, I just want to remind you why we started this series. We started this series because we felt that there is a gradual dearth of tolerance in our society, tolerance of conflicting opinions, and almost an inability or unwillingness to engage in debate with somebody who does not really agree with us. So we just shun them and we'd rather not talk to them. So what we want to do is we want to create this forum. We want a safe space where you can debate anything. Anything can be debated, however different your perspectives on that. And the people that we invite, we expect that they will set the example for you to engage in debate with mutual respect and serious consideration to the other person's argument. So the debate is essentially about arguments, and going by the results of previous debates, that is what you have also, and you have also been an excellent audience. So, there's also a weight of expectations on your shoulders, where you appreciate all. Now, our speakers today do not really need any introduction, but I'll very briefly introduce them to you, starting with Mr. Kamal Khaira. Khaira Saab is the senior leader of the Pakistan People's Party. He has served as minister, once as information minister and the other time as Minister of Kashmir. Next to Khaira Saab is Waleed Iqbal. Waleed is a prominent lawyer and a politician, and of course a professor, a visiting professor at LUMS. And he is also associated, as you all know, with the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. And next to Waleed is Dr. Has probably knows more about offshore companies and tax law than most people that you know. He's written about 19 books and over 100 papers on this subject. Then the proposition bench, we have Mr. Daniel Aziz. He is a member of the National Assembly. He's been elected at least twice. He's also served as Chief Executive. And as the Chief Executive of the National Reconstruction Bureau, and has held many other offices. Next to Mr. Aziz is Mr. Cyril Almeida. Cyril not only is a well-known columnist who has written writes not only for The Dawn but several other newspapers and magazines, and is one of the more well-known political commentators, but he was also a student at LUMS. He sat in these seats many times. And last but not least, Mr. Musaddiq Malik. Mr. Musaddiq Malik has held the portfolio of Minister for Water and Power and is Special Assistant to the Prime Minister, and is again an articulate and vocal member and leader of the South. So thank you very much. It will be chaired by the rules the member of the committee. He is going to explain all the rules and the format to you, and then he will be chairing.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Assalamualaikum everyone, and welcome to the last LUMS quarterly debate of the year. We're very happy to have you here with us. Before we begin, there's an important note I'd like to make. We had a very hard time trying to find female voices for today's panel, and that's something everybody should be aware of. This has been a problem in all our other debates too, but for this one, it was absolutely impossible. So we apologize, we tried very hard, and at the same time, we want you to think about this question. Why don't we have enough women who can sit on stage and talk to you, as we do have about a 50% female participation rate in our audience. These are important questions that are important in shedding light on the way our society functions, and I think, if anything, we should think about it. Thank you. Now, without further ado, the rules for the day are as follows. First of all, please make sure all your cell phones are on silent. We do not want to be disturbed during the debate. Secondly, do not interrupt a speaker while they are speaking. Panelists, the rules are slightly different for you. You are allowed to raise points of information during somebody else's speech. You may raise your hand and then interject. But we would like that also to stay at a minimum, ideally. So, without further ado, yes, it is up to the speakers whether they want to accept points of information or not. Without further ado, the motion of today's debate is, this House believes that Pakistan's Prime Minister should not resign. Now, we will have our first speaker from the proposition bench, Mr. Danyal Aziz. Also, sir, the person sitting right there in blue is going to hold up a piece of paper stating the number of minutes you have left. So please try to adhere to the time constraint. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, LUMS, for having us here today. Though I might take certain exception to the framing of the question. But anyway, now that we're in it, let me make my argument. What you're seeing on the screen here is a screenshot from the website of ICIJ. That's the organization, or the project of an organization, actually, that has launched this whole worldwide thing, about 2.6 terabytes and 11.6 billion files and 100 countries and 390 journalists and 1 year of research. So I want to shed a little bit of light on that. On their website, they have a legal section in which they have a disclaimer which says, we do not intend to suggest or imply that any persons, companies, or other entities included in the ICIJ Power Players interactive application have broken the law or otherwise acted improperly. This is what they've said right at the outset. Next. Then, if you look further, and this is very important, this is not just a leak. This is not just documents or data from the the Panama Papers of Mossack Fonseca. Why? Because they say the production of the profiles was complex and took several months. We combined a deep exploration of Mossack Fonseca documents with research in worldwide public records such as company records, property records, asset declarations, among others. So this is not just a leak. Like if you see Julian Assange or Snowden, they posted the documents without and the documents spoke for themselves. There was no analysis or added padding as you can see here, that they've admitted to. So this is much, much more than a leak. You need to understand that. And just so that you also keep in your mind that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are international terrorism, espionage terrorism wanted people around the world, whereas these people who have done the leak plus are supposedly heroes. So I want to show you a little bit about the detail of what they've come up with. Next. So in the front page of the ICIJ website, and indeed all of you are computer savvy, so when you go on it, what you'll see is right in the front, underneath the first banner headline calling it that these are people who are crooks and criminals and God knows what all, is this, it's in a highlighted portion. And in the second line, right up front on it, it says, the current and former world leaders in the data include Prime Ministers of Iceland, Pakistan, the President of Ukraine, and the King of Saudi Arabia. What does it say? The data includes, which data? Mossack Fonseca. Next. Then inside the story, on the front page again, you go to the 4th or 5th paragraph, and it says, the files expose offshore companies controlled by the Prime Ministers of Iceland and Pakistan, the King of Saudi Arabia, and the children of the President of Azerbaijan. Who? The children of the President of Azerbaijan. Controlled by the Prime Minister of Pakistan. These companies are, according to their website, on April 3rd when they launched it. Next. If you go further, on page 11 of the same story, when you scroll down, what you find is the children of Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif also owned London real estate through companies created by Mossack Fonseca, the law firm record shows. So now it's the children, it's not the Prime Minister. There's no evidence about the Prime Minister. Next. And this gentleman, Mr. Umar Chima, is on their website. CIRP is his organization, and he wrote a story in the news. And he came on television, on live television, and he was asked, that is the Prime Minister mentioned in the data that you reviewed? And he said, I've reviewed all the data. Next. And this is what he said. Pakistan, although no offshore entities directly owned by the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the Chief Minister Nawaz Sharif, as many as 8 companies have been identified linked to either the former's children or the latter's in-laws. So he has said that as his review, the Prime Minister is not included, but then on ICIJ it says his name is included in the data and he controls the companies. A little bit of a problem. Next. So we wrote to them. I wrote to them. I wrote a complaint to them. On their website, they have a place called ICIJ Contact, and I lodged a complaint that your data and your website information does not support the leaks that you're claiming from Mossack Fonseca. And lo and behold, on the 22nd of April, they changed their website. Guess what? The name of the Pakistani Prime Minister is no longer on the front page. They deleted it. Check it. What does it say there now? Current and former world leaders in the data include the Prime Ministers of Iceland, President of Ukraine, and the King of Saudi Arabia. Suddenly he's out of the data. What's going on? 2.6 terabytes, 11.6 million files, 1 year of research, go scrounging around everywhere to find data from different public records and try and plug that into an Assange type leak when they're hunted in Ecuadorian embassy and all over the world. Snowden lived in Russia in the airport for almost a year. So what's going on here? Next. Then inside the story where it said it was controlled by the Prime Minister, they changed that too on the same day. And what does it say? The files expose offshore companies controlled by the Prime Minister of Iceland, the King of Saudi Arabia, and the children of the President of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Suddenly he's not controlling them anymore. Now it's the children. Isn't that curious? This is the website. Go on it. You guys are all, you probably have your cell phones with you now. Check it out. Next. This is the total sum data that's on the website. If you go to Power Players and click on that, this is the grand leak. This is a pledge document. This is a document that I'm going to explain in a minute. And this is a document that is buying 10 shares of a company called Gascom. Next. This first document, if you look at it, it's got an SAR reference number. SAR stands for Suspicious Activity Report number 1478. And this can only be created either from an institution that's registered with the Financial Investigation Agency of British Virgin Islands in a due diligence process that has 13 checklist things that if certain transactions, types of transactions take place, you have to report that. The only other way is through mutual legal assistance from another country on cross-border transaction. So some country, because this is being written back to Mr. George, we refer your letter dated 12 June 2012. So on 12 June 2012, somebody had written and gotten mutual legal assistance from Financial Investigation Agency, Mr. Errol George of the British Virgin Islands, to open these records from one second. Next. Sorry, 1 second. That can only happen if you demonstrate from the requesting country that you have appropriate legal government institution of the requesting country, that you have a verified open investigation in the requesting country, and that this letter dated 12 June 2012, ICI states that political exposed persons in July 2012. So Mariam Nawaz is called a politically exposed person in 2012, as if they found out about something and then took them off their management list. That's not true. This is how she became politically exposed person. Don't you want to find out which country asked for mutual legal assistance to generate this? Let's suppose it was Pakistan. That means Pakistan demonstrated that they had an open investigation and that some government agency had written that to them. That means they have this letter. That means this is not a leak. That means we knew about this since 2012. That information is yet to come because I've written to British Virgin Islands Financial Investigation Agency, and this decision to issue a suspicious activity report can only take place after the Attorney General of British Virgin Islands puts his signature that these conditions are satisfied, and the judge has to adjudicate on that. Then it's forwarded to them to request the information, and it's sent to the requesting country. Go on the website, Financial Investigation Agency, British Virgin Islands, look at the annual reports, look at the manual for mutual legal assistance, read it yourself. Don't take my word for it. Do your research. Next. Now, the request for mutual legal assistance, I've explained to you, these are quotes from their documents and their manuals. British Virgin Islands Financial Investigation Agency. Just type that in Google, you'll get there. Next. These are the countries in 2007 that requested mutual legal assistance. Pakistan isn't in there. So guess what? I looked for their 2012 report, wanting to see if Pakistan is listed here, because this is from their annual report. And lo and behold, on their website, they don't have the report from 2012. So I called up Mr. Errol George in British Virgin Islands. And I said, my name is Daniel Aziz, I'm calling from the Parliament of Pakistan. Could you kindly give me a copy of your 2012 report? I'm doing research. And they said, oh sure, we have an electronic copy. And then the line went toot, 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 and since then, they won't answer the phone and they won't get back to you. I've sent them emails, I've been tracking them down, they won't give us the 2012 report. Next. This is the manual for the British Virgin Islands. You'll find it on the website. Have a read. Next. Next. This is a story, again, on April 30th, 2012, in the same time frame, 1 month, by Rahman Malik, the then Minister of Interior, who might be the person, head of FIA, that has the authority by government to write to British Virgin Islands to get that information. So, did he have an investigation? He must have demonstrated that to British Virgin Island FIA. What happened to that investigation? Did they close it because there wasn't enough information? Because in this story, published in the news on April 30th, and you can find this on Transparency International website, you don't have to ask anyone for it, go read it yourself. What he's saying is that he's going to take them to court. File a reference with the National Accountability Bureau. And this is 18 years old, because on the title it says in 2012 that it was a 14-year-old FIA inquiry. This is not new information, and it has all that detail. Just read it. Next. I don't have enough time to go into the detail. Then if you come to the charts, if you go on the charts that are in the website on ICIJ, you will find power players. Click on that. You'll find these schematics. In these schematics, it says that Mariam Nawaz is a politically exposed person. But when you go on the pop-up and scroll down, it says she's not a politically exposed person. Next. If you go into the story, all of these items that are in the story have nothing to do with the leak that they presented. There's no connection, there's no mention in those 3 documents that I showed you. All of this that's in the story that says Hassan Sharif and Mariam executed documents in June 2007, that these 2 companies own a UK property from use by the family, that Nescol and Nielsen were transferred to another agent in July 2014, that Hassan Sharif was the sole director of Hang-On Properties, that Hang-On Property Holdings was acquired by Gascon Limited. It's nothing to do with the leak. This is that padding that they did to jumpstart the system, putting the Prime Minister's name up there, saying he controls the companies, and then changing it. But they didn't just change it for the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Guess what? They've also changed it for the Prime Minister of Iceland. And guess what? They've also changed it for the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Next. Check it out. Then in these schematics, they've made many mistakes that have been identified to them. It's written to them. I can give you copies of these now. You can go on the website. They've changed all these schematics now since the 22nd of April. ICIJ, 100 countries, 2.6 terabytes, 11.6 million files, and one big fat lie. The name of Hossein Nawaz isn't even in there. Next. Then in the story, what they fail, all of our great media, independent media who's got a chabi, what they fail to understand is, in the main story it says what? Maryam, Hussein, and their father have been detained on such charges, exiled to Saudi Arabia, and also, whoops, did we forget that in the talk shows? Did we gloss over that? They were acquitted in 2000 for everything that they're being accused of. It says that ICIJ figured that out. Did we bother to check? No, because we're on a witch hunt. Next. These are some of the films that were shown on TV of them traveling, putting their bags in the car, and it was being said on TV that these were the bags that were full of money. Pakistan se paisa gaya, Pakistan se paisa gaya. Did they see that they were acquitted in 2000? On the same charges? Did anybody bother to mention that? Did any of you hear that? I challenge you. Next. Then we had another great episode after a few days. They went and did their research. They said, stolen asset recovery program up, that's it, we've got new companies. Now he's really had it. The UN has declared him. What evidence was the UN working on? Here it is. According to Pak Tribune account of a paper released by the Pakistan Muslim League. It was a political snow job. This is the website, go on it, stolen asset recovery program. This is these companies that they were talking about. And it says everywhere, unknown, unknown, unknown. UNK stands for unknown. Next. Raymond Baker, you heard about that book? Oh, well, he wrote it in the book. Look at chapter 5. These companies, they knew about that. Everybody knew about that. You guys are being fooled. What did it say? Allegedly. Reportedly. And what information did UNODC and STAR website use? This information, a chapter from a book that itself is saying allegedly were used to facilitate purchase of 4 other brand flags. That saying reportedly payment of transfers was made to Bank Paribas. This is now someone's supposed to resign over this? For heaven's sake, next. This is I can't wait to hear what he's going to say now. This is the disclaimer on the STAR Initiative website. Guess what it says? That nothing on this is for general purposes only, and we have nothing to do with this information. It's a total disclaimer. Read it. I don't have time to read it out to you next. Go to the website. Do your research. What does UNK mean? It's described as meaning unknown. Everywhere in STAR website it says unknown, unknown, unknown. But those channels that got them going on, they figured it all out. You know, they caught us now, man. We really had it this time. Next. This is a great step. This is the wrong date, I'm sorry, that's from 2013. But I want you to see this. Let's go play it. This is the background of that clip that they took out of context. This is Mr. Mahmoud Rashid from PTI, one of the leader of the opposition in the Punjab Assembly. Play it. This time I have to take off my turn. What happened? I knew this was going to happen. Anyway, let me explain to you what it is. This is not in my time. He has a list of about 5 pages in which he says 8 properties of Kulsum Nawaz, 7 properties of Asma Sharif, 10 properties of Hussein Nawaz, 14 properties of Hassan Nawaz, and 8 properties of Maryam Nawaz. This was the list that he was showing when Maryam Nawaz called into the program and said, what is he showing? This is all false. And I want to tell you something. If you zoom in carefully on the sheets that he's doing, you can see the companies. None of them are included in the ones that are being talked about today. Not a single one. You can check it out. No, you told me that. Money laundering. The Sarkar took the money overseas. He's given an affidavit. He knows that. Yeah, when I put a gun to your head, you'll write down anything about your grandmother that I want you to write. Just for your information, he was acquitted from the courts of Pakistan. Not the courts, not the kangaroo courts. The courts that were under the control of the then government that was hunting them. Next. So this data now is all changed on the website. This is the Iceland Prime Minister, the resignation you got, rah, 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 domino effect, here we go, Pakistan's next. I don't think so, guys. Because they changed the data. Go on Power Players. Next. You see that it has, you see that it has 2 things? This was a share certificate signed by Sukhmander and his wife. And now they've deleted that. Go next. Now they have 3 new data sets since the 22nd. They changed it all now that he's resigned. This is a setup. Next. Go on the website and see. This is the Financial Investigation Agency team from British Virgin Islands. Let me introduce Mr. Errol George, who's going to change the destiny of the people of Pakistan. This is Mr. Errol George. Next. One second, please, I'm almost finished. This is the email, just to give you the thing, and I can mail it to any one of you. In fact, I want to mail it to all of you. This is the email I wrote to ICIJ. Look at the date. Complaint on Panama Papers and power players. I detailed each and everything in there, and I told them, if you don't apologize and change this, we're going to sue you. And what they've done, just imagine, go on the website now, go to power players, scroll down. You know what it says there? After they took off the Prime Minister's name from the big bold neon sign in the front for the whole world to abuse Pakistan, it says updated on April 22nd. They didn't even have the guts or the courtesy to write that they're taking the name of the Prime Minister of Pakistan out of their story. This is your grand one, 2.6 terabytes and 11.6 million files. 100 countries and 300 journalists and 1 year of research. Their own representative wasn't willing to write what they've written on their website. This was an attack on Pakistan. I don't want to talk about why right now, but you'll find out in a few months. Thank you very much.
You don't have to look for he looks black.
I'd like to call on stage the next speaker, Mr. Qamar Sawan Kaira. There's been a slight change in the order. We're now going to start.
Oh, that wasn't that good.
Dr. Kamal Haq.
I think I should sit patiently rather than making a lot of fuss about what is the source and how to discredit the reports. I will present certain incontrovertible facts because this is a very serious matter and we should not take it in a manner where we can make fun of everything. So I was very much concerned about the reports. I have relied my
Could the Honourable Speaker kindly explain who made fun?
I have no. I think of me. I'm not referring to you. Many others. So there's no need for the nation to make fun of anybody or to the Honourable Prime Minister. This is a serious matter where we have seen that a lot of flight of capital is taking place from Pakistan. The issue is very serious when we admit that $4 and $5 billion have been invested into very long. What is the law of the land is that, which is allowing us to taking money from Pakistan to abroad. What is the law? So we must understand that. And I will look at this whole affair and I will try to establish. I have not done any personal vendetta against anybody. My goal is only to tell the truth and to dislodge falsification around the entire matter. So first of all, the law is very clear that Pakistanis are not allowed to open even foreign currency account exceeding $1,000 without the approval of State Bank of Pakistan. Every Pakistani who wants to open a foreign currency account needs approval. Although there is no bar in bringing as much money as you want, but as far as outward remittances are concerned, there is a strict law about that. There was Economic Reform Protection Act 1992, which actually liberalized the regime. But on 11th December 1999, it was amended to actually check this kind of outward, although these are taking place. And my argument is that if we are able to establish that a lot of money is going out and coming, again as a round trip, to show it as legal remittances, we have to establish the source of that. The first thing I will tell you that there is a statement by Governor State Bank of Pakistan a few days back. Unwarranted. Somebody alleged that money came through some offshore account in Chaudhry Sugar Mill. Nobody prompted him to give a statement. He's an independent person. He's heading a Reserve Bank of Pakistan, which is supposedly independent. And he said, I know the nature of this amount. It is in fact a loan created from an offshore company. Now, who is the owner of this sugar mill? I have with me record. I was not even aware that I could also prepare this kind of information. And there is substantial, even if you can go to a website, you will see that there are declarations of 2012 and 2011 available on the website, where before this 2013 election, you were required to give 3 years declarations. There you will see that 500,000 and above shares are owned in this sugar mill by First Lady, and same amount by the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So if they are still owner in that company, and that company is receiving loan from an offshore company, we will have a legitimate question to ask that in any democracy, every power is a sacred trust. You have to exercise it transparently. He did not disclose in his wealth statement filed in 2011, 12, and later on that he has any interest in any offshore company. Mr. Daniel is correctly stating it, and all other people, that he has not any direct interest, for example, or name. But in offshore companies, this is the modus operandi, that you keep the name secret, but you are the beneficiary of the financial transaction. The most glaring example of it is that in the same year, 2011, Prime Minister received a huge gift from his son, which is 129 million. And then and about 9 million to his son. And this son is living in outside, but he is receiving gift in Pakistan, and he is a very rich person, because according to his own statement, he has minted billions in Saudi Arabia to buy property in London in 2006. So can you imagine that a son, so wealthy person, is receiving gift from his father in Pakistan, and that gift was earlier received by his father from his son. Gift directly to his brother or to his sister. Not only this, when I was looking minutely as a student of tax law, I suddenly saw that in 1 year, the daughter is shown as a dependent in 2011, and a huge agriculture property is shown in her name, but in the wealth statement of the Prime Minister. And the very next year, she is not dependent, and that property disappeared from there. And in that very wealth statement, it is written that I have 2 dependents, wife and daughter. So you can see that these affairs are clearly linked with some offshore companies from where they own, because these are incontrovertible evidence. There is no denial. Facts are only to be reputed where they are not accepted. In this case, sons have accepted that they have offshore companies. Whosoever is the beneficial owner, I don't want to go into that, because in offshore company you can change the beneficial ownership on daily basis. We don't know that. But who is the beneficiary? That is the question which is very critical to this today's debate. I have shown only 3 facts to you which are proving beyond any doubt that Prime Minister himself is beneficiary of the money remitted from abroad, and that money is remitted from offshore companies, not from onshore in UK, because it is clearly written. Secondly,
I have a point of
I will now continue my argument on that. The Prime Minister has violated the law of the land by showing in wealth statement his accounts outside in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere, whereas he was not allowed to open any account exceeding $1,000 outside. So in those accounts also money is coming from outside and then remitted to Pakistan. So in tax there is 3 purveyors. I will then finish. One is that if this kind of arrangement is made, it has to be discarded and the entire income has to be clubbed in the hand of the transfer of the asset rather than the transferring. So that law is there. But unfortunately, honest taxpayers keep on receiving notices of audit and otherwise, but Prime Minister, even though apparent things were there, apparent discrepancies were there, no tax person, even after having little intelligence and just looking at the tax audit, I would say it's a desk audit, not even you have to go to an forensic or something like that as a commission. On the basis of facts available in his tax returns, there are serious discrepancies, one. Secondly, there is a direct connection with the money he has been receiving as a beneficiary of offshore companies. So I will just conclude by saying that if you look at his statement of 2012, you will find that the same company that was bankrupted, that was Arabia Paper Mill, he is still the owner of that, and that company paid 38 million pounds to Al Tawfiq Investment Bank. If they had no interest in these companies or in these properties, then why in 1999, as a result of judgment of Queen's Bench, they had to pay 38 billion? That is the crux of the issue, and they cannot deny, which is very obvious, and he must go. Thank you.
On a point of information, could the Honourable Speaker please identify if the amounts that are mentioned were declared by the Prime Minister, and if the tax records are part of the scrutiny for contesting an election by opposing candidates, and whether the Prime Minister's name ever was mentioned in Al Tawfiq Trust?
The figures are very much there. I have noted that.
Were they declared by the Prime Minister?
Yes.
Were they declared by the Prime Minister?
These gifts coming from his son are declared by Prime Minister in his return, but he did not disclose the source. But when you check at the accounts and the record, you will find these are gifts, and in the same year, he is giving gift to the daughter and the son, as I mentioned. He could have easily given to that. Secondly, so I have only to answer this. And secondly, these amounts, you can go and see easily. These are available on the website of even Election Commission of Pakistan, that in that year, even the agricultural income declared was not properly taxed, because he was required to pay tax on the agricultural income on a progressive rate of tax, because it was either on the land basis or on the in Al Tawfiq Trust. At that point of time, he was director in Arabia, so jointly and severally he was responsible to lead the payment.
As you mentioned in the Queen's Bench.
I'm coming to that. So once you are directors, your liability is there, but there was extra liability of 3 directors which they offered. that the judge said, okay, this is of his father, two brothers. But since you are director in the company, you cannot say that I was not responsible for, and obviously they said they were living in that property on rent first, then on ownership. I don't have to challenge the facts which are even admitted by the family. So no, there is no need for that. It is my thing to say that. Those facts are admitted by them and we are the beneficiary of these. So my simple question is that if children at that point of time had no independent sources, automatically law requires these properties and income have to be clubbed with the father or with the mother. That they never did that, this is the violation of the law of the land. That is my
So if you have anything you'd like to ask of either the first speaker of the prop side or the off side, raise your hand and please address your question to a specific person.
So sir, the bottom line is what you were saying.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking you, sir.
My name is Daniel.
So the bottom line is this is a conspiracy against the Yemen government. Effectively what you are saying, there is a foreign conspiracy going on against, specifically against the Prime Minister Nasser. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the reason this opportunity or this whole campaign has originated is based on a lie. And that lie I've shown you, not because of what I am saying, but where it originated. And it's not only Pakistan. They've changed the Iceland data also. Please check it.
Yeah, because there are so many documents.
No, that's not allowed, I'm afraid.
So number one, you sit in a high position of authority. I don't think that it is very ethical of you to point towards the picture in the manner that you did and say कि ये वो लोग हैं जो पाकिस्तान के प्राइम मिनिस्टर को expose करना चाह रहे हैं. This is George Frankna and he is the one trying to bring down the Prime Minister. That is not the way, in my opinion, to go. Number two, as stated by his arguments, you never, even in your questions, and I am open for the panel to come back to it, in your entire presentation जो आपने यहाँ पे चलाई थी, उसमें एक दफा भी आपने वो points जो solid facts जो पाकिस्तान के इलेक्शन कमीशन ऑफ पाकिस्तान की तरफ से आए थे, जिन पे आपकी हुकूमत को बहुत ज़्यादा एतमाद है, ना आपने उनका जिक्र किया, ना स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान के लॉस का जिक्र किया, ना टैक्सेशन लॉस का जिक्र किया, जिसकी वजह से ये सारा इशू स्टैंड करता है. The day is not whether the Prime Minister was involved in offshore companies. The question at the end of the day is whether the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Mia Mohammed Masri, was trying to evade taxes. Was she earning violence?
I think it would have been better if you had been chosen as a panelist and I would be asking. But that being as it may, I don't know what problems may be in your own mind or what kinds of complexes you have. I didn't attach any negative connotation whatsoever. I simply presented the information. This information is not mine. This information is available on the website. You can go and check it. I just thought that it's important for you to understand that the Financial Investigation Agency, which is written on that letter, is an agency of the British Virgin Islands. And in the British Virgin Islands, this suspicious activity report that Errol George, whom I showed you, who's the head of that organization, cannot be created unless mutual legal assistance is requested for it. I have no connotations whatsoever. I resent that you're trying to imply that I have. The second thing that you asked me is, I had 15 minutes. In those 15 minutes, I could explain to you this background, which I thought was the most important information. Why? Because this is the information that has never been scrutinized. And I think you will give me that. And I think I've done it well. The information... Honorable question questioner is asking for is something that is scrutinized by the FBR, it's scrutinized by the then regime in power, it's scrutinized by the State Bank of Pakistan, it's scrutinized by the political opponents. During the filing of nomination papers of any of you who have a political family, the most difficult time of contesting election is to get your nomination approved. And in that, no effort is spared to look at all of these facts and details and agricultural holdings and degree certificates and whether somebody knows the particular ayat from the Quran Pak, or you've seen it on TV. You've seen this whole, even now, this whole election that happened in Lodra was over a degree. So all of this is scrutinized. What wasn't scrutinized? What wasn't scrutinized was the big fat lie.
Hi, I just have a question to Mr. Ikram. First, can you answer any of the evidence given by Daniel Saab? And secondly, and this is a very pedestrian question, how come a gift from a son to a father or a father to a son, whatever the amount, automatically mean to be an offshore company gift? Can it not just be a gift?
It is simply written there that this was received from account which is offshore. And
does that automatically mean it's illegal?
No, not automatically, it was there. And secondly, as I said, that this was a colorful transaction, that in 1 year you received 129 million, and then you give 31 million to, for example, if out of love and affection I want to give something to my sister, who is also beneficial owner in my offshore company. It is more appropriate for me to give gift directly to her because she is looking after my trust and my property. And this is what I admit. So it is very strange on the face of that, that sister is very near and dear. I will out of love give that 129 million or 31 million directly to my sister. Rather than I will give it first to my father and then he will give it 31 million to them because they were running short of funds here. Even, I don't want to go further into that because I had little time to tell you, but even in that year when they were not in power, they could not justify with their local resources the expenses incurred on that driving place. And after that, I'm not sure who is paying the expenses of that huge palace. It is to be brought by this country that if it is out of national exchequer or taxpayer money, can you allow in any democracy to a person to live in such a palatial house and the entire money is to be paid by the nation? So in that very year, they had a serious liquidity problem. And since they have funds outside, they remitted money from there, and they had no other choice to justify the expenses here when they were not. That was exactly my point, that it is not the offshore company that is in question. Largely, we are Pakistani are faced with the problem that when on the top people are not paying their taxes, then there is a general consensus in the country that we need not to pay taxes and we should borrow money and we should keep on.
More questions towards the end, and we are going to take pauses once 2 speakers are done from each side, so don't worry about that. Without further ado, I'd like to call in the second speaker of the proposition bench, Mr. Cyril Ayub.
There we go. Not as used to TV as the rest of you guys. Thank you very much for calling me back to LUMS after, I think I've been here on the stage after 15 years. I should warn the opposition, the last time I was on the stage, I was collecting a trophy, and it was a debate trophy. And I should also thank the opposition for their speaker order, because I think this is the first time we've ever seen 2 politicians stay so quiet for so long. I'm going to start off by first trying to respond to some of the questions Ikram have raised out here. And I think a lot of this is about technicalities and about wealth statements and was written there. If that was the case, it was about tax filing and wealth statements, I think most of us should be either expelled from the country or in jail or perhaps not holding any kind of office. So I think what we need to understand out here, what we're talking about today is the intersection of law and politics. And let me say this up front. I mean, there was some trepidation when I was asked to take part in this debate, not for the proposition, but when I told that my two partners over here are going to be both from PMLN. So, you know, I'm not here to defend the Prime Minister. What I am here to argue is this House believes that Pakistan's Prime Minister should not resign. And we know why we're having this debate. We're having this debate not because of the Lahore Pak Plus. We're not having this debate, or we're not having the debate because of the Lahore Pak Plus. We're having it because of the Panama Papers. And what the Panama Papers have done, Daniel has brilliantly exposed that they actually don't have much concrete substance to them. But I think what we do know why we're standing here and why we're debating it today is that what the Panama Papers speaks to is a tendency in Pakistan for our elected officials to have great wealth through, if not dubious, but many inexplicable ways. And that's really, when we're talking about it, it's not just on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle. I think the question about should the Prime Minister resign or should he not is actually showing an evolution in Pakistani thought. Because 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I think there wouldn't even be any debate out there. And so today what I'm standing up here to talk about are three simple points. Number one, when we're talking about the intersection of law and politics, when we're talking about politics, let's be clear, we're talking about the democratic system in Pakistan. We want a system that is progressively improved on what came before. And from that point of view, what we need to do is hold our politicians' feet to the fire. We must be careful not to burn down the house. Number two, we cannot escape the shadow of civil-military relations in this country. And what I'm going to argue is that a resignation at this stage and the alternating cycle that we saw in the 1990s led to you know what. And we really don't want to go back to that cycle. And number three, and you're going to have to give me a little bit of patience here, but I'm going to argue that Mia Saab, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, is possibly the best placed in the country today amongst the civilian leadership to in fact achieve some of the democratic policy goals, whether it's foreign policy, whether it's relations with India. And I said patience because clearly he's had 3 years and not much has happened. But we can argue that his resignation at this point would set back both the democratic project, it would enhance civil-military divide, and it would also deprive us of the one chance we have in an individual, a leader, whether we like Nawaz Sharif or we don't, whether we voted for him or we didn't. But he stands as a man who is committed to certain policies which I think are democracy enhancing in Pakistan. So going to the first point, which is let's hold our politicians' feet to the fire, let's not burn down the house. And we've already seen several instances in the last few years. I think there was a reference to wealth statements. In this last week, we've seen that Mia Nawaz Sharif, Mohammad Nawaz Sharif, has provided wealth statements over the last 4 years, which have apparently doubled or tripled or whatever his assets, as is Imran Khan, as is other people. Because this is what democratic continuity does. The things that they could lie to us about 5 years ago, they're unable to continually lie about. Every year that this becomes an issue, they are forced to make some kind of concessions. And I think, frankly, as a third-time Prime Minister, as somebody who's been in the political system for 30 years, as someone who's invested in not just completing a historic full term as a Prime Minister, but possibly even going for another term after that, Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif is the one politician whose feet we can hold to the fire, and he will respond because it's in his interest to respond. He is the one person that we can focus on. And again, I plead with you, if this sounds counterintuitive, just follow the trajectory here. What continuity gives us is a chance to improve the system. And what people who have a stake in that continuity, which is the Prime Minister himself no less, is to progressively add something to the quality of democracy. So we saw with the Harla and we saw with the PTI trying to oust him a year and a half, 2 years ago. Until then, electoral reforms weren't even a talking point. But they became a talking point, and now there's a commission in Parliament which at some point is going to perhaps give us an electoral system which is a little more clean, a little cleaner than what came before. Similarly, what is the point of the Panama Papers? Really, what are we looking for from it? What we're looking for as a result of these Panama leaks is somehow a financial system and a political system which is slightly cleaner, slightly better, and slightly more representative and responsive to what Pakistanis aspire to. And this is where I think if you just follow the trajectory, if Mia Nawaz Sharif has to resign today, who will replace him? It'll be either another member from the PMLN, it'll be somebody from the PTI, or it'll be someone from the PVP, and we'll start the cycle all over again. Muhammad Nawaz Sharif has had to, because of these revelations, progressively make certain concessions. And he's going to have to continue to make these concessions. But if we just oust him, we start from square one. We're back to the beginning. We now have a politician who will come through and then we learn 3 years later in the stage of leaks that he had some foreign company or he had something else going on. And that these allegations that we have with Muhammad Nawaz Sharif, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, are more than a decade and a half and 2 decades old. That is what holding a politician's feet to the fire is about. Progressively make them uncomfortable so that they deliver the results that we're interested in. On to the second point, civil-military relations. At the end of the day, this is a tricky one because everyone's going to argue, no, if the Prime Minister resigns, that doesn't mean the military is coming and taking over. Of course it doesn't mean that. But what it does, it makes that likelihood more possible. And again, if you go back to the 1990s cycle, I'm going to argue not from a principled point of view about why dictatorships are bad for Pakistan. I'm going to argue from a very pragmatic point of view of why dictatorships are bad for Pakistan. They're bad for Pakistan because the time period that the dictator wants or needs to make the reforms he's trying to achieve irreversible is longer than the dictator can hang on in power. And we've seen this each time. If you look at just the local governments introduced by all three of them, they come, they go, and the system is chucked out with them. Whether we're talking about civil service reform, whether we're talking about judicial reform, whether we're talking about police reform, the kind of things that you and I as Pakistanis want, a better system, a better country, a better polity comes through by slow and sustained reforms. And that is exactly what a dictator doesn't have on his side, which is the time that's required to institutionalize those reforms. So every time they come in, they'll bring in a new system, they'll do something, they'll bring us local governments, and then because it's associated with that person, it gets unwound. That doesn't get us anywhere. I don't care whether it's X or Y ruling us, as long as perhaps the system is delivering more to us. And that's why, from a pragmatic point of view, leaving aside the principal points, the problem with dictatorships is that they cannot deliver on what they set out to deliver because they can't hang on to power long enough, and for reasons which I'm not going to get into out here, but it's clear why the political legitimacy erodes faster than the ability to deliver institutional reforms. And finally, I'm going to turn to the issue of the Prime Minister himself. This one might be, as I said at the outside, counterintuitive. But I think we all know that there's one politician in Pakistan who gets it. Who gets it in terms of what does this country need? Do we need jihad? Do we need war with India? Do we need interference? Any one of these policies, including, and I insist, we go back to the issue about the Saudi-Yemen war, which happened a year and a half ago. Everyone said, oh, no, the Prime Minister would do it in a heartbeat. He'll send all the troops he could possibly send to Saudi Arabia because he owns them. Right? Wrong. Actually, he did. And we now know this because just recently, our army chief lectured the Iranian president. It was not just a one-sided decision that was made. And we've not seen at any stage at all from Nawaz Sharif in the last decade, since the Charter of Democracy, espousing any kind of policy which you can argue is fundamentally detrimental to the viability, sustainability, and the good health of our country. Now, you may not like Mia Muhammad Nawaz Sharif. You may not vote for him. You may not even think that he's a good prime minister, but you can't argue against the fact that his consistent policy prescription over the last decade have pushed us or are trying to take us towards a country which is a little more stable, a little more secure, and a little more prosperous for us. Not for them, not for the politicians, but us, the people of Pakistan. And for these three reasons, because I think that we must hold our politicians' feet to the fire, but we should not burn the house down. And chucking out Mohammad Nawaz Sharif as the Prime Minister of Pakistan at this moment will be akin to burning the house down. And once we burn that democratic house down, we know what comes after that. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe 3 years from now, maybe 5 years from now. Last time it took 8 years. But when that next option comes, that option will set us back further. It's not going to be back to square one, we go back to square minus one. Because military dictatorships cannot hang on to power in this country long enough to institutionalize their reform. And thirdly, and this is perhaps the important reason, the counterintuitive reason, that this Prime Minister gets it. He gets what is in the interest of Pakistan, a democratic Pakistan, a stable foreign policy, and a Pakistan which is not a threat to its neighbor, but an opportunity. And for those three reasons, I present that this House believes that the Pakistan Prime Minister should not resign. I wholeheartedly agree.
So dark and so silent over here. Mr. Shahbaz Sharif had promised in his election campaign to remove load shedding in 6 months. And before even taking office, our present Prime Minister said, "Mere chote bhai ne joshe khitabat mein ye keh diya." In any civilized democracy, betrayal of a campaign promise means ouster by the vote next time. Ladies and gentlemen, for different reasons, I too, like from the other side, Mr. Danial Aziz, take exception to this proposition that this House believes that Pakistan's Prime Minister should not resign. I believe he should. I also take exception to one other thing, among several others, is that in the span of the last 3 weeks, and look at the circumstances, there is no smoke without the fire. In the span of the last 3 weeks, our Prime Minister has twice been on national television on a personal issue. I take exception to that. This is not a national issue, this is a personal issue for him, a national issue for all of us. यहाँ कितने लोग हैं जो उर्दू नहीं समझते, जरा हाथ खड़े कर देंगे। मोसेस आज़ीम, जवान कायरा साहब के एक साथी पीपल्स पार्टी के फाउंडर्स में, मैं उससे बात शुरू करता हूँ। पीपल्स पार्टी के फाउंडर्स में से एक हैं, दानिश्वर हैं, कॉलम निगार हैं, बड़ी अच्छी 2-3 किताबें लिखी हैं कलामा इकबाल पे, सीरत नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम पे, उन्होंने मुझे दी थी। थोड़ी बहुत मेरी से उनसे जाती दोस्ती भी है, कॉलम लिखते हैं। मैंने कायरा साहब से भी कभी कंफर्म किया है कि जी उनके बारे में ऐसा तो नहीं मशहूर के कुछ झूठ बोलते हैं। उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं, ऐसी कोई बात नहीं। नाम उनका है कयूम निज़ामी, नॉट दैट वेल नोन बट ही इज एन इंटेलेक्चुअल स्कॉलर उर्दू। और कयूम निज़ामी साहब के मैं कॉलम का हवाला देता हूँ, नवाई वक्त में वो शाया हुआ था। ये मेरे ख्याल में नवंबर 2014 के या अक्टूबर 2014 की बात। और उस कॉलम में वो लिखते हैं कि जब मियां नवाज शरीफ 1990 में पहली मर्तबा पाकिस्तान के वजीर आजम बने, तो उनके मॉडल टाउन की रिहाइश गाह पर उनके वालिद साहब को, जो जिनको लोग अब्बा जी भी कहा करते थे, वो भी अब्बा जी कहते थे, लोगों ने भी कहा उनको अब्बा जी कहा। अल्लाह उनको बड़ी रहमत करे। मेरे फैमिली से उनके बड़े अच्छे ताल्लुकात थे, तो मेरी वालदा गवाह है यहाँ रहती। वो अब्बास जी से मिलने गए और मुबारकबाद देने गए, वो नहीं गए। कॉलम में लिखते हैं कि जनरल हमीद गुल जो उस वक्त अभी लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल के तौर पे डायरेक्टर जनरल ISI के ओहदे से रिटायर हुए थे उस वक्त, वो उनको मुबारकबाद देने गए। तो उस कॉलम के मुताबिक कहा जाता है कि मियां नवाज शरीफ के वालिद ने उनसे पूछा, जनरल साहब बेटा प्राइम मिनिस्टर बन गया, कोई मशवरा देंगे आप? तो उन्होंने कहा जी कि आपके बेटे को, आई थिंक मियां नवाज शरीफ की उम्र 42 वर्ष, जनरल हमीद गुल ने कहा कि मेरे उनसे अपनी कोई एग्रीमेंट डिसएग्रीमेंट हो या ना हो, अलग बात है, उनका भी इंतकाल चंद महीने पहले हुआ है, उनको भी तरीके लेकिन हमीद गुल साहब ने मशवरा ये दिया बकौल उस कॉलम के कि मियां साहब आपके बेटे को, 42 साल बेटे को अल्लाह ताला ने इतनी कम उम्र में इतना बड़ा ओहदा दे दिया, मेरी आपसे सिर्फ एक दरखास्त हो, मेरा एक मशवरा है, आप कारोबार बंद करें। उस पे अगेन दैट कॉलम सेज कि उस पे बड़े मियां साहब का जवाब ये था, जनरल साहब जाने दें, कारोबार तो अभी शुरू हुआ है। उसी कॉलम के आखिर में कयूम निजामी लिखते हैं कि मलेशिया के एक प्राइम मिनिस्टर होते थे महातिर मोहम्मद, उनको जब वो तीसरी मर्तबा अपने मुल्क के वजीर आजम मुंतखब हुए, उनको एक कॉलम निगार ने पूछा कि मिस्टर महातिर या डॉक्टर महातिर, मेडिसिन के डॉक्टर महातिर, आपने अपने मुल्क को एक एशियन टाइगर बना दिया है, बताइए कि आपकी कामयाबी का राज क्या है? तो महातिर मोहम्मद का जवाब ये था, और महातिर इमरान खान के हीरोज में शुमार होते हैं, बड़ी गाला में किसी हीरो में जाके साथ पार्टी शूटिंग होती थी हमारी, और इनके इमरान खान ने क्रिकेटिंग डेज में कॉलम भी लिखा था कि किन लिविंग और डेड पर्सन के साथ आप डेल करना पसंद करेंगे, 8-10 बहादुर का नाम लिखा। तो बहादुर मोहम्मद से जब पूछा गया कि आपकी कामयाबी का राज क्या है, आप तीसरी दफा प्राइम मिनिस्टर बने हैं, आपने अपने मुल्क को एशियन टाइगर बना दिया है, तो बहादुर मोहम्मद का जवाब यह था कि जब मैं पहली मरतबा वजीर आजम मुंतखब हुआ, मेरे पास एक चॉइस थी, या मेरा मुल्क तरक्की करेगा या मेरा खानदान तरक्की करेगा, और मैंने अपने मुल्क के हक में फैसला किया। My dear ladies and gentlemen, this proposition is not about putting ICIJ in the dock, International whatever committee of investigative journalists on the dock. This is about putting our Prime Minister, the holder of the highest office in this country under the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, 1973. And the issues involved are to the following effect. The issues involved are, there are offshore accounts, there are offshore companies, there are offshore assets held through offshore companies, about which, as I said already, the Prime Minister himself has deemed it necessary to twice appear on national television, about which we see contradictory statements of 3 siblings. One says to Tim Sebastian in 1999, and he's asked categorically about the same offshore companies. Nielsen Enterprises Limited, incorporated in the British Virgin Islands, Nestol Limited, incorporated in the British Virgin Islands, through which properties are held in Park Lane and Mayfair, and these are not properties which you and I can afford. These are properties worth tens of millions of pounds. So admittedly, now one brother says in 1999 to Tim Sebastian, he stutters and stammers in saying that I know nothing about them, who owns them, I am here like a student living with his parents, that rent is paid on a quarterly basis, it comes from my country, regarding those same properties, regarding those offshore companies. And then, well, Maryam Nawaz Sharif Sahiba's some clip was to be shown. She denied, maybe she was denying categorically, I don't necessarily need to rely on that, but she's denying owning any foreign assets or properties. And then, this is in April or March 2016, and in April 2016, Hussain Nawaz Sharif appears on national television in a talk show and says these 2 companies are owned by myself, and they are held they are controlled by a trust held by my sister. So they are contradictory statements. There is the Interior Minister of Pakistan, the defender of our homeland security, who says everybody knows these flats belong to the Prime Minister. He's been going and meeting him there and all of those things. Fine. So when we have an admission, then we have contradictory statements. There are cover-ups, attempted cover-ups. The question, the issue involved is whether in the holding of these offshore companies, these grand assets abroad, and even the possession of the affordability of going to Savile Row and getting suits measured, bespoke suits, they cost thousands of pounds. That kind of affordability, having that purchasing power, going to some shop and trying to buy or looking at a Rolex, which runs into hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds. The question is whether those assets, that purchasing power, that capability has come from legitimate means, or that has come from stolen money, or money which was proceeds of crime, or which had tax evasion underlying it, or which constituted money laundering in one way or the other. Those are the questions involved. And how will those questions be investigated? Who will investigate those questions? Who will take up those issues? There are local issues involved inside Pakistan. There are issues involved cross-border in other jurisdictions. If you and I write to any person in any jurisdiction, nobody's going to send any authority, any data, any document, any evidence needed. Nobody is going to respond. It has to be an agency or instrumentality of the government of Pakistan that has to issue that letter or make that request. And which are the institutions involved here? The institutions involved here, just like Dr. Ikram was telling you. There is the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1947. Who is the regulator? The State Bank of Pakistan. There is the FIA. There is the FBR. There are FIA and the FBR are directly controlled by the government of Pakistan, at the head of which government sits Mian Muhammad Nawaz Sharif as Prime Minister. The State Bank of Pakistan is theoretically an independent institution. It is an agency or instrumentality of the government of Pakistan. And likewise, there are other institutions inside Pakistan. How can you expect an impartial inquiry? An inquiry and gathering of evidence, obtaining of evidence, producing of evidence, discovery of evidence from institutions and instrumentalities that are directly reporting to a sitting Prime Minister. That is not going to happen, my dear ladies and gentlemen, unless the Prime Minister resigns. That will send a message that nobody should be fearful. And I tell you what, and I tell it and I say it with great shame, I regret to say this to you, that it is the government of Mian Nawaz Sharif's own track record which shows that leave alone these institutions which are directly reporting to the Prime Minister and the federal government. Even otherwise, we have seen with this very dispensation that, regrettably I say again, shamefully I say again, they try and make the relationship between the executive and the judiciary also to deteriorate to that of master and servant. I bring to your attention Ehtisab reference number 30 of 1998 against former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto and the first husband Asif Ali Zardar. My political disagreements are on one side, but we all know what happened in that. We all know that the sitting law minister Khalid Anwar was on the telephone. There are taped conversations with the Chief Justice of the Punjab, Rashid Aziz, with the sitting judge of the Lahore High Court, Mr. Malik Qayyum, and that same Ehtisab reference. They are ordering the judges, do it on Monday, give them the maximum sentence, forfeit their property, disqualify them. And even when the case went to the Supreme Court set that judgment aside, observing that Justice Malik Qayyum was chasing after this reference. Right when the thing got transferred to Rawalpindi, he chased after that because the Chief Justice issued a notification and sent the case to Rawalpindi. That's when we have this kind of a dispensation. Where can you expect impartiality? Where can you expect an honest probe? How will we ever be able to get to the bottom of whether the Prime Minister of Iceland resigned because there was widespread resentment that he and his wife had millions in some offshore account. The Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan has recently resigned. Nothing has been proved. Just he was accused of having rigged a highway construction contract worth $100 million in a way so that the tender could be awarded to a Chinese company which did not have the requisite license. The Prime Minister of Romania in Bucharest resigned in November. It was in consequence of a nightclub fire that killed 32 people. But actually it was preceded by these allegations of money laundering, allegations of forgery, allegations of tax evasion. When you have this kind of scenario, when you have these kinds of circumstances, when you have this kind of a mindset, the relationship between institutions, of dictating to the judiciary, of making the relationship superior to that of master and servant, unless the Prime Minister of Pakistan resigns. And he's ready to accuse anybody of all those wrongdoings, all his political opponents of wrongdoing, and then sit innocently in front of the television and say, oh, mere saath tum sharaf ne ye kiya, mere saath jao lagte mujhe jo training di, so on and so on. मेरे पास प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं, लेकिन आपको रियल लाइफ में एनिमेशन दे दूंगा। इनकी मासूमियत पे ना जाना, इनके धोखे में हरगिज़ ना आना, लेते हैं ये मुस्कुरा के चांदों से अल्लाह। The Pakistani nation deserves a truthful answer to whether proceeds of crime, proceeds of tax evasion, proceeds of money laundering have been involved in amassing foreign wealth on part of the Prime Minister and his family. The biggest challenge in this process is finding out who is the ultimate beneficial owner, UBO. The biggest challenge. Look it up, UBO, what it is. And whosoever holds, it's the son or the daughter or the son-in-law or the sister or the wife, is irrelevant. The bottom line is, who racketeered, who got involved? Was this a huge fraud? Was this a huge subterfuge to actually abuse office as sitting Prime Minister, as Chief Minister, as Finance Minister, and all those different offices that were held, and to violate the laws of Pakistan or to otherwise indulge in some kind of fraud? Those are the issues involved. We can never get to the bottom of this. This is Pakistan's taxpayers' money. And I'll tell you, मैं आपको अर्ज कर देता हूँ, ये आखिरी बात है कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर टैक्स कौन देता है सबसे ज्यादा? वो पाकिस्तान की गरीब आवाम देती है। ये भी आप गौर कीजिए। कोई ठेले वाला, कोई सब्जी वाला, कोई फ्रूट वाला जब दिन के 1000 या 700 रुपए कमा के जाता है घर, तो उसमें 400 रुपए टैक्स में जाते हैं। क्यों? वो साबुन खरीदता है, उस पर टैक्स देता है। वो माचिस खरीदता है, वो उस पर टैक्स देता है। वो तेल खरीदता है, वो उस पर टैक्स देता है। बैलेंस करवाता है तो आपको मैसेज आता है ना कि 100 रुपए का बैलेंस है, 60 रुपए आ गए। हमने इस चोरी का सुराग लगाना है। इस चोरी के सुराग के लिए प्राइम मिनिस्टर को इस्तीफा देना जरूरी है, उसका कभी सुराग नहीं लग सकते। मैं अल्लामा इकबाल के शाह से आपसे इजाज़त चाहूँगा। ये इल्म, ये हिकमत, ये तदब्बुर, ये हुकूमत पीते हैं लहू, देते हैं तालीम मसावत। मैं खाने की बुनियाद में आया है तजल्जुल, बैठे हैं इसी फिक्र में पीराने खुराबात। चेहरों पर जो सुर्खी नजर आती है सरे शाम, या गाजा है या सागर मीना की करामात। तू कादिर वादिल है मगर तेरे जहां में है तल्ख बहुत बंदा है मजदूर के औकात। कब डूबेगा सरमाया परस्ती का सफीना, दुनिया है तेरी मुंतज़िरे रोजे वकाफा। The wolf in sheep's clothing must go.
Question of beginning with.
Given that you yourself stated that we can never adequately find out who it is or like where it is that the money is going, is an accusation enough to remove the Prime Minister from power given all of the conditions? Because regardless of what conditions exist in other countries, within Pakistan we know that there's a lot of instability as was pointed out by the proposition. How do you justify removing someone from power given these conditions, based on an accusation which has not been proven? even by 100 researchers or like from a year down the road.
I didn't say you will never find this out. I said you will never find this out unless and until there is a proper, truthful, impartial inquiry. That's what I said. And it is a big challenge. Finding the ultimate beneficial owner UBO is a big challenge, which is why all the agencies and instrumentalities involved need to work independently. And for that, all that the Prime Minister has to do is resign and step down. We are not, throwing him into the Arabian Sea along with the rest of the Parliament. We are just saying he should resign. Somebody else from his party can become Prime Minister, but it will show that the law is the same for the powerful as well as the weak. ताकतवर और कमजोर में कोई फर्क नहीं है. ये आप NA 101 में अभी बाय इलेक्शन हुआ है, जिसमें जस्टिस इफ्तिखार चीमा नामी एक शख्स को डिस्क्वालीफाई किया गया था क्योंकि गलती से वो एक बैंक अकाउंट अपनी बीवी के साथ वो क्या थे, जॉइंट अकाउंट होल्डर थे, जो उन्होंने अपने नॉमिनेशन पेपर्स में मिस कर दिया. और इनकी पार्टी के ही थे, मियां नवाज शरीफ की. But he was ousted by an election tribunal and the Supreme Court upheld it also. लेकिन प्राइम मिनिस्टर की इतनी सारे निकल रहे हैं और अल्टीमेट बेनिफिशियल ओनरशिप का हमें पता नहीं लग रहा. That's why I'm saying the law should be the same for the mighty and for the common.
Let's get down to the reality. No one is asking Mia Saab for resignation apart from BP, and we all know that. मेरा एक सवाल है. मियां साहब के वालिद साहब के जो वालिद साहब थे, वो क्या कहते थे? I would not like to go there. मियां साहब को इज्जत करता हूँ मैं. सर एक चीज़ का जवाब देते हैं. Within 20 to 25 years, how can a person? Panama Leaks for पहले before asking this question. This whole question of Panama Leaks was basically to raise the question of corruption. 25 साल के अंदर how can you accumulate $1 billion when you are saying that you are not corrupt? This is a basic question.
I'm already intimidated with this question. I'm feeling more intimidated. Exactly in the same way as Jahangir Kareem in 20 years.
Interrupts the speakers will be asked to leave. So please maintain decorum. Sir.
I think, unfortunately, I think your question is more an allegation than it is a question. And first of all, you assume that there's $80 involved. I haven't seen the wealth statement confirming that. So what I would request is that if it's a serious debate, then we should have some kind of evidence on the kinds of questions that you're asking.
Let me also say, I'm also here to defend the motion. And this is not pertinent to motion, but since you're raising it, we're here to apostles, so kind of have to give the answers. In 1935, his father, I don't know his father's father, owned a steel mill. 1935. Start counting. 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 2005. This is 2016.
Question is for the proposition. Mr. Dania, I think most of us sitting here or standing here are very confused voters, and you confuse this even further. The question is, who do we trust? Mr. Dania Aziz of 2004-2006, who sat on national
Speakers are absolutely right. You are required to restrict your questions to the arguments presented. Try not to get personal.
Alright, let me finish the question. The question being, what's the moral high ground for the Prime Minister to continue to hold office when as Chief Executive of the country, he goes around the world, tells other people to invest in Pakistan, but his own family is not investing in Pakistan?
thank you very much for the question, and I take exception to your personal comments, and I will expunge them from my memory. That's not part of the debate. But with regards to the Prime Minister, I think that if you judge his particular condition as any normal situation in Pakistan, you will fail to understand that his political experience has not been a comfortable one, let's just put it like that. And by sheer dint of survival, these situations have resulted. Once you invest 10 years of your life in a particular business in a particular place because you are not allowed to continue as you thought you would like to, what do you do? Just pick up and leave? It's not so easy when you have significant investments in plant machinery, employees, offices, relationships, accountants, banking facilities, customers. There's all these relationships over the years, they begin becoming part of the business model. It's not something you can just unplug and walk away from and expect that it will be immediately recreated upon your alternative. So a lot of the things that Cyril and Dina was saying, I think should come to mind at this time, that when we keep shocking the system, these kinds of results will continue to persist. And that's exactly what we should try and avoid.
This is going to be the last question before we move on to the last speakers.
So my question is to Mr. Cyril Almeida. With all due respect, sir, you presented a very pessimistic argument, right? So you said that if the Prime Minister resigns today, chaos will ensue, the ceiling will fall, and the world will come to end, and we'll all self-destruct. My question to you is, despite all that pragmatism you've been talking about how Nawaz Sharif, if he goes away, this world is going to end, do you principally, morally, ethically believe, objectively, as a person who's not representing any political party, that this Prime Minister, accused of all these allegations, this Prime Minister who has been involved in illicit activities, do you believe that he should resign?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start off by thanking Waleed by channeling his inner Imran. I felt and in my several years of doing this, I've learned to be suspicious of politicians who quote lengthy poetry, but even if it's grandfathers. But to answer your question, absolutely. I mean, if we look at everything that's come out through these patrimonies, leaving aside the explicit and specific rebuttals that my friends here, Mr. and will make and Daniel has made already, is what's new in this? In 2013, when Nawaz Sharif was elected for the third time, really, do we now know something as a result of these Panama leaks that no normal... Rather than leave it up to me, I prefer leaving it up to the people, and I think the people spoke in 2013 with full knowledge, full disclosure, and exactly the allegations that are flying around this room were flying around there. Twice the number of votes is like almost twice as many as PTI. So I like it when the people speak. Let's go last time. Forget about my opinion.
Closing speaker from the proposition bench, Musafir Mandan.
I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. I wrote and I got tired. And I stopped writing. And many of the points came from the bench, and many of the points came from you. And I honestly feel intimidated. I've never felt like this. I'm sensing the mood in the house. I don't know where to begin. I wanted to say point of order. I want you to say point of order when any person in Pakistan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan is called wolf in the guise of sheep, or sheep in the guise of wolf. Some language. And I thought I was coming to LUMS. Which were very decently written. I can basically circulate this. And you can all read, and there's no mention of wolves and sheep and cows and dogs. And I thought I was coming to LUMS. Little I knew that I was actually coming to the same bloody talk show where I go every night. Why assume that educated people would basically have a different conversation? Why assume that? There's no reason to assume that in Pakistan, because decency, ladies and gentlemen, is dead. Hell be upon decency. And hell be upon democracy. Who cares about people's votes? Who cares? Let's show through muscle and intimidation. Who's gonna rule? I'm out of breath. And now that I am, I'll go back to my original. The couple of points that I wanted to take. I thought I was coming here speaking to very sophisticated people, so I tried to shed lights on this proposition from 4 lenses or 4 perspectives. Legal, moral, political, including the real politics, which basically is being spoken of. And finally, from the perspective of rights. I leave this. So let me take the first one, the first bit. Prime Minister of Pakistan is not named in Panama Papers. Not at all. Panama Papers, in their own disclosures, even if they're very sacred and everything is right, and I'm not going to bring any suspicion into it, say there is no assertion of wrongdoing in Panama Papers, even by their own organization. They have qualified it. It's on their website. All right. So the Prime Minister is not named, and nothing illegal has happened. And there's nothing illegal about offshore companies as well, since there are 2 lawyers sitting here. They know it, know that. The top 50 companies of the world are right now holding $1.6 trillion in offshore companies. 1.6 trillion. Let me name a few, because you use them. Apple, 181 billion. That's basically burn all of the apples that you have floating around. GE, 119. How about fridges? And how about the air conditioners as well? Microsoft has 108. How many of the people here basically use Windows? Burn them. Offshore. Pfizer, 74 billion. And Google, my friends, the one that you love, $48 billion. And what is the legal position that we're taking? That how is it possible, legally, for a child to give a gift to the father, or the father to give a gift to the daughter? Doesn't that indict the Prime Minister of Pakistan? Of course it does. I think he should go. Because none of the people sitting in this room is going to inherit anything, aren't we? No one's father is going to give anyone a dime from henceforth. Because that's the new rule of the land, that if someone gives someone money, your own children, you should be thrown out of the door. Why did he pay back the loan? That's the legal argument. He raised the argument that how in the hell could the Prime Minister of Pakistan pay back the Odaikia loan? Let's talk about the people who haven't. And I think people who have paid their loans should go, and people who have not paid their loans should stay. How about that for a change? Because that's the legal argument that we take. And now I've lost my track of thought. So I retire my legal arguments because this is all I had. Maybe a few more thoughts this. So let's basically move to the moral framework. So there were allegations, not on the Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, on the Prime Minister's children. With an assumption that somehow or the other the Prime Minister is behind it, and maybe that assumption may, after investigation, turn out to be the truth. But has it been established? No, not yet. So hold your horses. Not yet. So hold your horses. So what do we have? Allegation on the children of the Prime Minister, and what does the Prime Minister do? Prime Minister presents himself twice in 15 days and says, I and my family, adults who are 44 years old, who are exiled from this country by a dictator, and like my son who's at a foreign university right now, I hope to God one day he sets up a business and he becomes successful. We condemn them. We condemn them for getting exiled. We condemn them for basically starting up businesses, and we say, aha, you do the business outside of Pakistan. When you were exiled, how dare you? What should they have done? And those who did not go into exile, and they basically are doing businesses, what do we say about them? Using power, using force, murgi ki कीमत बढ़ा दी, दूध की कीमत लॉक कर दी, बहुत आला. Let's condemn these children. Let's make, as the dictator did, इन पे जमीन तंग कर दी जाए, ना ये दुनिया में बाहर जाके काम कर सके, ना ये दुनिया में पाकिस्तान में आके काम कर सके. How dare they? That's the argument. That's the matter. And what does the Prime Minister say? He says, I will not take a minute to step down if any wrongdoing is found out on my behalf or my children's behalf. Was there a deeper and bigger moral obligation? He stands in front of 200 million people and he says, if anyone through this legal proceeding headed by the Chief Justice either retired first, and when that was basically maligned, the acting Chief Justice, if it is found that I'm implicated or my family members are implicated, I would not stand, I would stand down, step down in a minute, I'd go home. But what you want is not to give him a fair trial, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you want. So, moral is an interesting slippery slope. We've previously done witch hunting, and we have historically hanged women on crosses on pure moral basis. We've had people walked into gas chambers purely on moral basis. So here, I tear it apart in front of you. Here, the morality. There's only one morality anywhere in our society, and that's a consensus on morality, which is the legal framework. When you have a consensus in a democratic society on a certain kind of morality, it finds its voice in legal frameworks. Has a legal framework been violated? And has he not said, if I'm found guilty remotely, I won't take a minute to walk away? What do you want to do? Witch hunt him? Do that. Because you've done that previously. And that's my third perspective, which is the political perspective. Let me first take a benign view on that, and then I will talk about the real politics, my friend. Real politique, as they call it. The benign view is that you want democracy or not? Say no! Come on, guys, clap! No!
No.
No, we don't want democracy because they're thugs, because they're looters. We're waiting for that man in shiny armor on a white horse to come and save us. That one pure man. Not just then there is only one way of throwing the Prime Minister of Pakistan out, and that is through the will of the people, and the will of the people sits in the parliament. Ask the parliamentarians to oust him, constitutionally oust him. If he's already been convicted and everyone, 200 million people of Pakistan believe in that, go to the bloody parliament and throw him out. Oh, I apologize. I apologize. I didn't mean it in that way. I actually meant it the exact other way. Now let's talk about the real politique. Let me read something to you if I can find it in my screen. Here. Oh, I'm wasting my time. Have you guys seen the movie Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? Have you? So in this, Alice says, walks into the garden in which the roses are white and they're painting them red. And she says, oh, pardon me, but Mr. 3, the card, why must you paint them red? And the card says, oh. Well, the fact is, Ms., we planted these white roses by mistake. And the queen likes them red. If she saw white instead, she'd raise a fuss and each of us would lose their head. This democracy in Pakistan is a white rose, ladies and gentlemen. So off with the head. Because that is the realpolitik. Now, if you really wanted, if you really did not trust in FIA, you shouldn't have come on television and said, in FIA से investigation करवाएं, NAB से investigation करवाएं, इससे करवाएं. पर जब हमने कहा हमारी मर्जी का नहीं, अपनी मर्जी का FIA का एक अफसर दे दें जिससे हम करवाएं, तो बोला नहीं करवाएंगे. नहीं करवाएंगे. ये सारे 1956 का कानून है, जरूर खराब होगा. 1956 में कोई अच्छा कानून नहीं था. 1956 के कानून के मुताबिक हम एक इंक्वायरी कमीशन बना देते हैं जिसमें एक रिटायर्ड चीफ जस्टिस, जिसको आपने अभी एग्री किया था 4 दिन पहले कि वो धांधली जो इलेक्शन के अंदर सिस्टमैटिक हुई थी उसका वो एहतसाब कर ले, उन्हें लगा देते हैं. आपने बोला अस्तगफुरुल्लाह, यानी रिटायर्ड चीफ जस्टिस. हमने कहा हाँ, गलती हो. हमने बोला सिटिंग चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ पाकिस्तान, तो आपने उसको भी मिलाइन कर दिया कि सिटिंग चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ पाकिस्तान आपके टीओआर पे. तो काली साहब ने बोला सारी ऑपोजिशन आ जाए, दोबारा से टीओआर बना दे. टीवी पे कहा नदीम मलिक के प्रोग्राम दोबारा आ जाए. आपने कहा नहीं, ये हमें चाहिए, दिस हाउस बिलीव्स दैट पाकिस्तान प्राइम मिनिस्टर शुड रिजाइन. दैट ये चाहिए हमें. ये है रियल पॉलिटिक. गलती से लिख दिया उन्होंने नॉट रिजाइन, क्योंकि जमहूरियत में ऐसा नहीं होता. जमहूरियत के अंदर दे रिजाइन. तो ये है इस मुल्क की रियल पॉलिटिक्स. ये हम पहले भी देख चुके हैं. किसी भेड़िए का नहीं जिक्र करूंगा, किसी कुत्ते का जिक्र नहीं करूंगा, किसी शीप का जिक्र नहीं करूंगा, किसी जानवर का जिक्र नहीं करूंगा, सिर्फ एम्पायर का जिक्र करूंगा जिसमें उंगली के अंदर. सबसे कमजोर मौकफ मैं आपके सामने रखता हूं, क्योंकि मजबूत वाले तो खत्म. तो कमजोर मौकफ ये है राइट्स का. तो 4 चीजें कहूंगा. इनोसेंट अंटिल गिल्टी बदल गया, दुनिया के कवानीन में बदल गया ना. अपने बच्चों के लिए आप यही कहेंगे ना कि जो ज्यादा जोर से आवाज लगाए तो आपके बेटे को भी सलीब पे टांगा जाए. क्योंकि क्या जरूरत है ट्रायल, क्या जरूरत है कानून की, क्या जरूरत है इंसाफ की, when it is an open and shut case, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it? Because 3 statements, 3 children contradictory condemn him. Off with the head. वो एक एलिस इन वंडरलैंड किताब भी पढ़ी होगी एक दो लोगों की. फिल्म तो बहुत से नहीं देखी, क्योंकि फिल्म और किताब में फर्क. तो फिल्म के अंदर वो कहते हैं, किताब के अंदर कहते हैं, the king added in an offended tone, let the jury consider the verdict. No, 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 said the queen. Sentence first.
Drummer Zaman.
सबसे पहले तो मैं दुनिया का आपका लिबर्टी सोसाइटी का शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ कि आपने हमें मैं लम्स को दूर से देखा करता था बहुत सुना था, मुझे बहुत इज्जत महसूस हुई कि आपने मुझे बुलाया और आपने अगर तो मेरे दोनों दोस्तों की जो उस तरफ हुकूमत के सियासी विंग को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, अगर दोनों के गुस्से को परफॉर्मेंस का हिस्सा मानो लेकिन अगर इनका रियल गुस्सा था तो फिर इनके अंदर के हालात आपको समझ किसने कहा वज़ीर आज़म इस्तीफा दिया? और दूसरी बात यह है कि मैं आपसे मुखातिब हूँ, मुझे आप पर गुस्सा नहीं आना चाहिए। हो सकता है आप मेरी जमात को पसंद ना करते हो, आप मुझे जरा कम क्लैप करें, आप इमरान खान को ज़्यादा पसंद करें, ज़्यादा क्लैप करें, क्योंकि आपको गुनाह नहीं है कि मैं आप पे बरस पड़ूँ, मुझे भी टॉलरेट करना चाहिए। के लिए डेमोक्रेसी के लेक्चर देते हुए खुद भी थोड़ा सा डेमोक्रेट है, दिल दुखाना नहीं चाहता। तो गुजारिश है, मेरी जमात, मेरे कायद ने, यानी मेरे लीडर जो है, उन्होंने कहा कि मियां नवाज शरीफ साहब आपको अपना एक वादा या अपनी एक एडवाइस याद करा रहा हूँ, उस पर जो बिलावल भुट्टो ने ट्वीट की जिसके बारे में कहा जाता है कि उन्होंने इस्तीफा मांगा, उन्होंने कहा क्या? उन्होंने कहा जनाब वज़ीर आज़म, आप जब अपोजिशन में थे और यूसुफ़ुल्लाह गिलानी साहब उस वक्त वज़ीर आज़म थे, उनका केस सुप्रीम कोर्ट में चला। जब केस चला तो आपने फरमाया कि अब क्योंकि वज़ीर आज़म आपका केस सुप्रीम कोर्ट में चला गया है, लिहाजा आप स्टेप डाउन करें, अगर सुप्रीम कोर्ट आपको बरी कर दे तो वापस आ जाए, नहीं तो अल्लाह अल्लाह खैर सलाह। उन्होंने कहा जनाब आपका अपनी एडवाइस थी, जरा उस पर अमल करें। मामला है क्या? क्या मुल्क में डिबेट चल रही है? पूरी दुनिया में डिबेट है। हमारे मुल्क में डिबेट यह है कि पनामा पेपर्स के आने के बाद जो रेवोल्यूशंस हुई है, उनके बाद इसकी इंक्वायरी होनी चाहिए। डे वन से हमारा मुकदमा क्या था? हमने कहा कि भाई ये बड़े सीरियस इश्यूज आए हैं, और क्योंकि ये सारी सूरत हाल जो मीडिया के जरिए सामने आई, उससे पहले वज़ीर आज़म साहब के अपने बेटे ने एक प्रीएम्प्टिव इंटरव्यू दिया, एक्सप्लेनेटरी नहीं, एक प्रीएम्प्टिव इंटरव्यू दिया, प्लान किया, तुमको पता था पहले। उनसे मीडिया वालों ने सवाल किए हुए थे, तमाम वो लोग जिनके नाम आए थे उनसे पूछा गया था कि आप इस पर अपनी राय देना चाहें तो दे सकते। उन्हें पता था कि यह मार्केट में आने वाली है, लिहाजा उन्होंने उसको पहले, वो खबरें जो पहले नहीं बताई तो काम के साथ शेयर नहीं की अननेसेसरीली। उस वक्त किसी जरूरत, आज तो एक्सप्लेनेशन है ना, उस वक्त आउट ऑफ ब्लू, पता नहीं हमें भी समझ में आया कि इन्होंने क्यों किया। तो वो एक प्रीएम्प्टिव इंटरव्यू देके अपने गले चिकन डाले, उसके बाद ये रेवोल्यूशन आ गई। और इसके अंदर भी आज तक मैंने तो दुनियापुरी में नहीं सुना, और खास तौर पे हमारी हुकूमत की तरफ से वज़ीर आज़म, उनके बेटे, उनके स्पोक्समैन, किसी की तरफ से ये नहीं सुना कि इसमें जो बातें लिखी गई हैं वो गलत है, क्योंकि वो बातें तो हुसैन नवाज मान चुके हैं कि दुरुस्त है, तो उसमें बहस कैसी? हम तो कोई एलिगेशन लगा नहीं रहे, ना पीटीआई लगा रही है, ना जमात इस्लामी लगा रही है, ना मैं लगा रहा हूँ, ना कोई और लगा रहा है। हम तो सिर्फ ये कह रहे हैं कि जनाब ये खबरें आई थी दुनिया में और उनमें ये बात दुरुस्त है कि उनमें कोई एलिगेशन नहीं है, अभी तक तो एलिगेशन नहीं है। सुना है उसका पार्ट 2 आने वाला है, लेकिन पार्ट 1 में जो बात आई है वो सिर्फ इतनी है कि जी ये कुछ कंपनियां हैं, कोई 2,14,000 के करीब, उनके ये डायरेक्टर्स हैं
या ट्रस्टीज हैं या व्हाटसोएवर दैट इज, और इनके पास इनकी ये प्रॉपर्टीज या बिजनेसेस या अकाउंट, उन्होंने कोई और एलिगेशन नहीं लगाया कि इन्होंने कोई करप्ट प्रैक्टिसेस की है, बैंक चोरी किया है, फ्रॉड किया है, फलाना, कोई एलिगेशन नहीं। लेकिन जब हुसैन नवाज ने खुद उसको प्रेम्प्ट किया और कहा बेटा मैंने 10 मिनट पढ़ लिया, लेकिन क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से 5 मिनट एक्सेस हुआ था, मैं भी करूँ। सो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से हमने तो कुछ नहीं कहा। जब हुसैन नवाज साहब ने कहा कि मैंने 2007 में ये प्रॉपर्टियां खरीदी और सऊदी अरब में मेरी कोई मिल थी जो मैंने बेची, एक मिल अभी भी चल रही है, दूसरे भाई वो ओनरशिप है शायद, लेकिन बड़ा कमाल है कि एक मिल बेची और जाके मैंने वहां कारोबार अपने प्रॉपर्टियां खरीद ली। तो तीनों हज़रात प्रॉपर्टियां खरीदी 2007 में, 93 से भाग रहे थे। मुख्तलिफ औकात में वो प्रॉपर्टियां आप कोलेटरल के तौर पे मुख्तलिफ बैंकों में भी रखते हैं, आपके खिलाफ बैंकों के फैसले भी आते हैं, फिर आप अपना लोन भी पे करते हैं, और फिर आप कहते हैं कि नहीं हमने 2007 में खरीदी, और खरीदी अपने नाम में, कंपनी के नाम। तो ये शेयर कंपनीज होती क्या है, क्यों बनाई जाती है? नहीं, मेरा कारोबार है, जायज पैसा है मेरे पास, टैक्स मैंने पे किया हुआ है, मुझे क्या खतरा है कि मैं अपना नाम छुपाना चाहता हूं? इन कंपनियों के जरिए क्या किया जाता है? इन कंपनियों का बिजनेस बेसिकली क्या होता है? ये शेयर कंपनियां कोई बिजनेस जनरेट नहीं करती, कमोडिटी प्रोड्यूस नहीं करती, गुड्स प्रोड्यूस नहीं करती, सर्विसेज प्रोड्यूस नहीं करती। ये आपके पैसे को छुपाती हैं, आपके नाम को छुपाती हैं, आपके टैक्स को बचाती हैं। ये 3 पर्पसेस होते हैं। आपने कंपनियां बनाई, आपने एडमिट किया, ओके, बाय लॉ दुनिया में बहुत सारे ममालिक ऐसे हैं, और हाँ सरमायादारी निजाम का ये कोड है, ये उस निजाम का कोड है कि इस निजाम के अंदर ट्रिलियंस एंड ट्रिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स आर पार्क्ड इन सच कंपनीज जो सर्कुलेशन से बाहर है। हमें एतराज क्या है? हाँ, प्राइम मिनिस्टर का उसमें नाम नहीं है, लेकिन हमें सिर्फ ये सवाल चाहिए कि वो पैसा कहां से आया था। हमने सिर्फ सिंपल सवाल पुट किया, कहा गया सऊदी अरब से आया था, जो कोलेटरल के तौर पे दिया गया। हमने कहा जनाब सिर्फ ये बता दें कि 2007 में आपने खरीदी, उससे पहले किसकी मिल्कियत है। हमने कहा कि आपने उसमें लोन लिया बैंक से, कौन से बैंक से लिया ये बता दीजिए, मनी ट्रेल दे देना, सिंपल बात है। और आपने इक्विटी अदा की होगी ना, 10%, 5%, 15%, 20%, वो आपने कहां से ली? 1993 में, क्योंकि आप इस मुल्क के हुक्मरान रह चुके थे और आपके समधी, आपके अजीज भी हैं, आपके बहुत डॉक्टर साहब आपके बहुत करीबी साथी भी हैं, और पॉलिटिक्स में भी बहुत करीबी साथी। उन्होंने एक एफिडेविट दिया था, दिया प्रेशर में था, परवेज मुशर्रफ की गवर्नमेंट थी, दबाव में दिया था, बिल्कुल बात दुरुस्त है। हमें बात सिर्फ ये करनी है कि उसके कंटेंट क्या है। अगर उसके कंटेंट्स को ट्रैक करें तो दबाव में लिया गया एफिडेविट क्या दुरुस्त है कि गलत है? उन्होंने कहा मैंने पैसे बाहर भेजे थे, मैंने अब तौफीक को दिए थे, मैंने फलां बैंक को दिए थे, मैंने फलां जगह, उन्होंने मनी ट्रेल बताई है। हम कहते हैं ट्रैक कर लेते हैं बस, और तो हम कुछ नहीं कह रहे जी, हम तो कोई इस्तीफे नहीं मांग रहे आपसे। कहा हमने ये कि जनाब आप एक कमीशन बनाएं। हमारी तरफ से ये मुतालबा था कि अगर जजेस नहीं मानते तो पार्लियामेंट्री कमीशन बना दें और फोरेंसिक ऑडिट हो जाए। ये पहले दिन से हमारा मुतालबा था। पीटीआई ने कहा कि जिन्हें सिटिंग चीफ जस्टिस की सरबराही में बना दें। हमने कहा ये बेहतरीन बात है, अगर बनता है मानते हैं तो बेहतरीन, नहीं तो पार्लियामेंट्री कमीशन बना दें और एक फर्म एंगेज कर लें जो इंटरनेशनल रिक्रूट की हो, पाकिस्तानी बेस्ड ना हो, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ बहरहाल बहुत सारे जराए से दबाव आ जाते हैं। आप ऑडिट करा दीजिए, मसला हल हो जाएगा। अच्छा ये भी नहीं करते, चले ठीक है आपने नहीं किया, आप कहते नहीं, आप अड़ गए इस बात पे, देखेंगे क्या कर रहे हैं। पहले आप इस बात पे अड़े रहे कि नहीं रिटायर्ड जज होगा, फिर आपने ये किया, चिट्ठी बात अपनी मर्जी के बना दिए जब आप बनाया। हालांकि आपके पास एक प्रैक्टिस मौजूद है। जब इलेक्शन धांधली के खिलाफ एहतजाज करते हुए इमरान खान और डॉक्टर तारुल कादरी धरना दिए बैठे जाके, तो उस वक्त एक प्रैक्टिस हुई थी। हाँ 56 का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, वो जो हमारा लॉ है अच्छा लॉ है, बुरा लॉ नहीं है, अच्छे लॉ थे उस वक्त। लेकिन उस वक्त ये तय हुआ था कि उस लॉ के तहत बनने वाले कमीशन के इख्तियारात बड़े महदूद होते हैं। और उसको अपने जुरिस्डिक्शन से बाहर जाने की जरूरत होगी, लिहाजा उसके लिए स्पेशल लेजिस्लेशन की गई। और ये आपने और पीटीआई ने कंसल्टेशन के साथ, उस वक्त हमें खतरा था सिर्फ कि इस मुल्क में शायद हमारे जमहूरी निजाम की कोई डिवेलपमेंट हो जाए, शायद। इसलिए हम पार्लियामान के साथ खड़े हुए थे। गालियां खाई गए कौन से लोग कहते थे नवाज शरीफ गिर रहा था, तुमने बचाया, कोई एहसान नहीं किया। हम अपने जमीन के मुताबिक पार्लियामान के साथ खड़े हुए। लेकिन सवाल यह है कि उस वक्त आपने कमीशन बनाया, आपने अपोजिशन के साथ बैठ के टीआर बनाया, प्रैक्टिस आपकी अपनी है। आज आप कह रहे हैं फिर यहाँ बैठ के हमारे साथ बात कर ले, कमीशन बना दिया, टीआर बना दिए। और शायद आपने सुना नहीं, आज शायद जाहिद अहमद साहब ने कहा है कि टीआर यही है, इसी से काम चलेगा। दास साहब ने कल किसी प्रोग्राम में कहा, आज जाहिद अहमद ने कहा जो आपके मिनिस्टर है डिफेक्टो। सो उनकी बात की है तो कहने को साइंस के मिनिस्टर है, लेकिन काम सारा लॉ मिनिस्ट्री का वो दे। गुजारिश यह है कि उन्होंने कहा, हमारा इशू ये है, चले जी परवेज रशीद साहब ऐसे कर लेते हैं, Prime Minister, अच्छा आपको क्वेश्चन हो गया, मुझे नहीं पता। अच्छा जी, गुजारिश ये है कि हम क्या कह रहे हैं, हमारा आपसे कोई ऐसा मुतालबा नहीं है आपने तकरीरें कर करके और वजीर आजम से तकरीरें कराएंगे। कौम से खिताब क्या होता है, आप अजीज तलबा आप बहुत बेहतर जानते हैं, पढ़े लिखे बेहतर। जब एड्रेस टू नेशन होता है, सदर या वजीर आजम खिताब करते हैं तो वो पॉलिसी स्पीचेस होती है। आप किसी बहुत अहम मौके पे, किसी बहुत बड़े बहरानी मौके पे और किसी पॉलिसी डिसीजन पे आप कौम को एतमाद में लेते हुए नेशनल एड्रेस करते हैं, एड्रेस टू नेशन होता है। आपने वजीर आजम साहब से अपने ऊपर होने वाले मजालिम के जिक्र करवा दिए, अपने पता नहीं उनसे क्या क्या बातें करवाई, और ऐसे ऐसे आपने रास्ते खोले हमारे लिए। भाई अपोजिशन को तो रास्ते चाहिए ना। आपने कहा मेरे साथ 72 में बड़ा जुल्म हुआ, मेरी फैक्ट्री नेशनलाइज कर ली, भुट्टो साहब ने बड़ी जाती की, तो मुझे मौका मिल गया, मैंने बताया जनाब मियां साहब वो सिर्फ आपकी फैक्ट्री नहीं थी, उस वक्त नेशनलाइजेशन एक पॉलिसी थी, पूरी दुनिया में थी, सिर्फ पाकिस्तान में नहीं। और पाकिस्तान में बहुत सारी इंडस्ट्रीज नेशनलाइज हुई, अच्छा हुआ बुरा हुआ ये एक अलग डिबेट, लेकिन आपको विक्टिमाइज नहीं किया गया था। यू आर नोबडी एट दैट टाइम, आप पॉलिटिक्स में नहीं थे। हाँ, आपने कौम को, बाकी फैक्ट्रियां बीबी को भी हुई थी, लेकिन ये आपने कौम को नहीं बताया कि जब 80 में आपको यही इत्तेफाक वापस की गई तो इन ₹1 वापस की। यू वर द ओनली एक्सेप्शन। उसके अलावा जितनी नेशनलाइज हुई थी कंपनियां, वो जब प्राइवेटाइज हुई तो प्राइवेट हाईएस्ट बिडर्स को जितने पैसे उन्होंने हाईएस्ट बिड दी थी उनको कहा गया ओरिजिनल ओनर्स को कि आप मैच कर सकते। सिर्फ एक खानदान था जिसको ये प्रिविलेज दिया गया कि उनको ₹1 में वो कंपनी वापस कर। और फिर वहां से मियां साहब कहते हैं मैं 72 में कंगाल हो गया और 80 में आपके पास 10 फैक्ट्रियां आ गई अचानक। यानी आपको 80 में फैक्ट्री मिली ना वापस, उससे पहले आपने फर्नेसें लगाई थी, आपकी कोई शुगर मिल नहीं थी। मुझे मौका मिल गया ना सारा एक्सप्लेन करने का, मैंने भी सवाल डाल दिए। आपने कहा कि हमने ये भी हिसाब लेना है कि जी वो मेरे एक मुंतखब वज़ीर आज़म को हथकड़ियां लगा दी गई। मैंने कहा साहब ये भी हिसाब ले ले, मुंतखब वज़ीर आज़म को फांसी पे लगाया था किसी ने। बिल्कुल अनवांटेड थी। अगर आपके एडवाइजर्स ने आपको ये एडवाइस किया है तो उनको पकड़िए, हमें क्यों बुरा कहते हैं। और आज आपने अपोजिशन चाहती है ना भाई, हंगामे हो मुल्क में, अपोजिशन चाहती है पब्लिक डिबेट चले, अपोजिशन चाहती है ये मुज़ाकरे लगे, मीडिया डिबेट हो, हीटेड हो, और जितना माहौल गर्म होगा। हमने क्या क्या कि आप पब्लिक डिबेट में आ गए, आपने कहा कि मैं जाके बाबामी रास्ता करता हूँ। भाई हम तो आपकी गवर्नमेंट गिरा रहे हैं। फर्ज करें हम कह रहे हैं यहाँ से मेरे अगले 5 मिनट शुरू होंगे, हम तो कह रहे हैं भाई कि आप सिर्फ इन्वेस्टिगेशन करा दें। अगर आपको ये खतरा है कि इस मुल्क में जमहूरी निजाम को कुछ हो जाएगा तो याद रखिए इस मुल्क के जमहूरी निजाम के लिए जानें हमने दी हैं। अगर रहते हुए पोर्टेबिलिटी का मसला है तो होना चाहिए, जरूर क्या होना चाहिए। अच्छा दिलचस्प बात क्या है, 1972 में हम कंगाल हुए, 1980 में हम अरबपति हो गए, फिर हम 1999 में 89 में वो एक जोनाथन जहाज आया था, उसकी भी कहानी मेरे सामने बयान है। वो जोनाथन जहाज ये था कि इनको एक स्पेशल प्रिविलेज थी कि इनका रॉ मटेरियल आता था जिसमें मशीनें भी आती थी, जिसमें पाइप भी आते थे स्क्रैप के नाम पे, और वो ऑफ रोड नहीं होते थे, वहां इंस्पेक्शन नहीं होती थी, वहां से सीधा ट्रेनों में लाद के वो आके इत्तेफाक फाउंड्री के अंदर वहां वेयर हाउसेस थे, वहां रखे जाते थे, वहां इंस्पेक्शन होती थी, और उसको उसके बाद उसकी ड्यूटी पे होती थी। कहा यह गया कि भाई हम वहां पोर्ट पे इंस्पेक्ट करेंगे। ये एक लड़ाई थी, अगर पोर्ट पे इंस्पेक्शन हो जाती चोरी पड़ती। इस लड़ाई में आपका जहाज लेट हुआ। अच्छा 1999 में आप कंगाल फिर भी है साहब ने, मैंने नहीं कहा, प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब ने फरमाया, मेरे वजीर आज़म ने। वो कहते हैं कि हम 1999 में 89 में कंगाल हो गए, फिर आप अचानक 99 में आप पति थे। अच्छा 99 में आप पे एक और जुर्म हुआ कि आपको एग्जाइल कर दिया गया, पता चला कि आप 10 साल का वादा करके गए थे। तो भाई आप वादा करके गए थे, उसके बाद आपने जाके फैक्ट्री लगाई, बहुत अच्छा किया। अचानक पता चला कंगाल गए थे, अरबपति हो गए। भी बता दे थोड़ा सा। अच्छा एक और बात है, इत्तेफाक 7 भाइयों की प्रॉपर्टी थी, जब नेशनलाइज हुई थी 7 भाइयों की, जब प्राइवेटाइज वापस की गई तब भी 7 भाइयों की। जब मियां साहब पॉलिटिक्स में आ गए फिर फैमिली डिवीजन हो गई। एक भाई के 2 बेटे जो पॉलिटिक्स में आते हैं, तीसरा नहीं, 2 बेटे जो पॉलिटिक्स में आते हैं, असूली तौर पर शासन में आपके पास रब्त नहीं होता, वो उनकी दौलत तो रॉकेट लगा के बढ़ती चली जाती है, और बाकी भाइयों के बेटे वैसे के वैसे ही। हम आज भी सिर्फ ये कह रहे हैं दुनिया वाला वज़ीर आज़म का नाम उसमें नहीं है, आगे बात में कर देते हैं, समझ आ गई। वज़ीर आज़म साहब का नाम उसमें नहीं है। कौम को शक इस बात का है कि कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि वज़ीर आज़म साहब ने अपने ओहदे का गलत इस्तेमाल करते हुए वो पैसा जो टैक्स के बगैर बचाया था, यहाँ इकट्ठा किया था, वो लॉन्डर किया है, बाहर गया है, इलीगल मीन से गया है। और वज़ीर आज़म साहब आप क्यों लोगों को क्यों इतना नाराज हो गए? आपने पता नहीं मैसेज किसी और को देना चाहते हैं, वो सियासतदानों से लड़ाई नहीं है भाई, हम तो आपस में पार्लियामेंट में लड़ रहे हैं ना। वो कहते हैं मैंने हवामी मैदान में जाके जवाब देना है, पता नहीं किसी को देना होगा। वो किसको देना है बेहतर जानते हैं। लेकिन सवाल ये है भाई, वज़ीर आज़म साहब को एक काम करना चाहिए, मेरी तजवीज़ ये है। जनाब वज़ीर आज़म उनके दोस्तों ने कहा भी कि पार्लियामान में उनको ऑप्शन करो, ये करो। उसने पार्लियामान में आप मेहरबानी फरमाएं, इन ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट बरतानवी वज़ीर आज़म अपनी पार्लियामान में आया और उसने आके अपनी सारी टोटल स्टोरी अपनी बयान कर दी, मेरी ये हालत है, ये सूरत हाल है, ये मेरा मुकदमा है। वज़ीर आज़म साहब ने ये अपनी पार्लियामान को मोतबर किया होता, वो पार्लियामेंट में चले जाते, जाके कहते कि ये मेरे एहसासे हैं, ये मेरे बच्चों के एहसासे हैं, ये प्रॉपर्टियां हैं, यहाँ से गई है, ये मनी ट्रेल है, बयान कर देते, मामला खत्म हो जाता। अब अगर आप चाहते हैं तो हम तो सिर्फ ये कह रहे हैं, अगर आपने नहीं किया तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन करा लें, और अब और प्रॉपर्टियां निकलते जा रही हैं। जितने आपको गुस्से चढ़ रहे हैं ना, तो चीटियां चढ़ रही हैं। आ गया वन हाइट पार्क की बात यह है कि वन हाइट पार्क का एक किस्सा शुरू हो गया है, और वो भी 2016 में, मार्च 2016 में वो हुसैन नवाज के नाम लगी है प्रॉपर्टी, और वो बिलियंस की है। उसमें 6.4 बिलियन पाक रुपीस पे किए गए हैं इस साल मार्च में। और हमें ये जरूर पूछना है कि आपके पास कहां से आ गए थे वो पैसे, सिर्फ ये कौम को बता दीजिए। अगर आपकी लीगल ट्रेल है तो बिस्मिल्लाह, हमें कोई एतराज नहीं है।
क्या
आपने सवाल कर लिया, हाथ बच्चों का है, लेकिन आपके सवाल का जवाब दे देता हूँ। अब मुझे आपने मौका दिया, चले बहुत बातें कर मैंने ये कहा कि वज़ीर आज़म साहब ने एक वज़ीर आज़म को एक मशवरा दिया था, और सूरत हाल बयान यही थी कि उस वज़ीर आज़म का भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट में केस था। हालांकि वो जज कोई और था, सूरत हाल भी कुछ और था। हमारे साथ तो अदलिया मुसलमाना ने किया है। आपको आज अपने किए हुए उस फैसले पे अमल दरामद करना चाहिए। अगर आपको लिंग्विस्टिक्स का बहुत एतराज है, ये भी आपने एक एतराज किया, तो मैं आपको कहूँगा आज भी आपको भी अपने लहजों पे कंट्रोल करना होगा। हमारी सियासी लिसानियत बहुत खराब हो गई। कि मेरे बारे में ये कहा गया कि वज़ीर आज़म के गले में रस्सा डाल के खींचूंगा। काश अपने भाई को कंडेम करते, जिसने कहा था मैं इस मुल्क के सदर को इस बाल
और बातें हैं जो इलेक्शन में पूरे नहीं किए, जीतने वाला और पेट फाड़ने वाला।
Okay, first of all, this side, so you were slightly over time and the proposition does have...
जितना ओवर टाइम था जी, उसने ही पहले वो हुए और मेरा भी हक था। किया और हम तीनों अलग-अलग लोग हैं, वो दो एक जमात के लोग थे। मेरी गुजारिश सुन लीजिए।
Okay, right now...
आप एक जमात में दो अफराद थे, आप उनको टाइम दीजिए, बिल्कुल दीजिए।
Sir, please maintain that. We need to move on with the program today.
मेरे ख्याल बच्चों को टाइम दें तो सवाल
जी सर, कोई टाइम। Questions. Meanwhile, everyone, you have been given an orange piece of paper and a white piece of paper. Vote white if you are voting for the proposition. Vote orange if you are voting for the opposition. And meanwhile, I'm opening the floor to questions. So, as we went through, ballot boxes are being passed around. We've done this. So, wait for something from Okay, thank you. Please maintain decorum while questions are being asked. Right at the back.
To be specific, you talked about that we need to burn all the money, all the cell phones that we are using, the American cell phone companies, Microsoft and Apple products. So the point that I need to make is that those offshore companies are benefiting those countries that the money is being placed in. If, let's assume that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif do have the money in the offshore companies. Then why doesn't he bring that all these years he has been talking about bringing banking investors back to Pakistan? Then why doesn't he bring more money in Pakistan so that he can increase the employment opportunities for his own assets? The second thing is that, sir, if you are, with all due respect, if you are that much confident on the credibility, on the honesty of our Prime Minister, then why doesn't our Prime Minister make a independent judicial commission to conduct an independent inquiry? Not that judicial commission that consists of judges that are retired, not that judicial commission that consists of judges that have any political investigation and the opposition also need to be taken into account. All you
I certainly, first of all, hopefully did not come out as someone who is angry at you. And if I've come out that way, I apologize from the bottom of my heart. Theater of presentation, which I basically, from the bottom of my heart, was giving out some arguments. But if it came out that way, it was wrong. So I accept, and I apologize if that's the case. Now, coming back to your questions. The companies that are offshore are placed in areas that basically are tax exempt. So, placing these companies in tax exempt areas is perfectly legal under the rules and regulations of the United States, the rules and regulations of the United Kingdom, and the rules and regulations of Pakistan. The allegation that is being leveled, so first of all, let it be very clear to everyone. And if that is not clear, we can, after this program, look into the books to establish that, because all of these companies that I've spoken about, Apple and Google and all of these, they are in very, very legalistic countries with very strict tax regimes. So they can only take advantage of what they can legally take advantage of, and nothing illegal can transpire. And if it does transpire, and it has a few times, people go to jail for 30, 40, 50 years, whatever the deal is. So all I'm saying is that these are perfectly legitimate instruments, and when you're doing trade across borders, in many jurisdictions and in many countries, you sometimes use these instruments to the legal extent to basically get tax benefit, which is perfectly legal. The second thing that I would like to say is that if you are basically a person who is a legal, which is a specific case, a person who is a legal entity, legal tax person in Saudi Arabia, and you want to do business in a country where you're not a resident of, you sometimes use these offshore companies so that you only pay corporate taxes and not income taxes. And income taxes is a beneficiary of the company which is in a tax haven or in a jurisdiction where there is no tax implication. That money comes to you, and then you only, when you take that money, you pay taxes in the jurisdiction where you live, which in this case is Saudi Arabia. So if he wanted to pay the United Kingdom taxes, there was no need for an offshore company. But because he's a resident of Saudi Arabia, and he can get the tax advantage, the income tax advantage of parking his company in a jurisdiction which is tax-free, he did that. Now, having said that, if there is any illegality in it, I consider we have appropriated a judge who is the acting, no, not acting, who is currently the Chief Justice of Pakistan, not a retired judge. And we've given him discretion, since that's not in the realm of the question, I won't get into that detail, which are unprecedented. They can get a forensic audit firm, commission it, it's written. They can commission any study. They can get any expert. They can basically go and require the government and the banks to give any data. And if the Chief Justice, the President of this Commission, deems that some information is being hidden or not, the government or anyone is not forthcoming, they have been given the legal cover to raid that place and confiscate that data and bring it back to the Commission. Now with all of this, if he's found guilty, he's already said he'd step down. All we are saying is, Chief Justice of Pakistan, unprecedented authorities, if he's found guilty, so let's find out, let's figure it out.
Everyone voted. Please raise your hands if you have not voted yet. Ballot boxes will reach you. Meanwhile, my second question, the second question.
Thank you. I have a very brief question from Ms. Lanya Latif, but also a comment from the opposition. And that question is, the PMLN has a majority in the lower house of parliament. The Prime Minister is the figurehead of a bigger party. Replacing the Prime Minister should not be that much of a deal. So why is this question important to the proposition? And later brief comment by why the opposition believes that resigning the Prime Minister would really be of consequence when the Prime Minister can still have one of his own men, I assume, predominantly as Prime Minister. So this are these, and then some of the opposition.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to use an example to answer your question. And that is not from too long ago, just about a year and a half ago. There was a series of allegations, not only about the Prime Minister, but about the whole Parliament, the whole election system. And there was various allegations that were given for substantiating that claim. Among them, one was that the acting Chief Minister at that time had, on a telephone, said that he had done his job of 35 punctures, and thereby that swayed the election against a particular party, in favor of a particular party, and therefore that was a rigged election, and therefore the Parliament should have another election. Then he said that another allegation was that the printing press behind Gora Hospital in Lahore was used to print fake ballot papers. Those ballot papers were then distributed to the candidates of the opposing political party, and they then used those ballot papers to stuff the ballot boxes and thereby illegally stole the election. I'm just giving you two examples. There were others. Now, after the Judicial Commission took place, in subsequent interviews, first of all, during that, the famed tape that was claimed never showed up, that the military intelligence had or something like that. And also, those ballot papers never showed up that were supposed to come in huge trucks and camels and all the examples that were given. And in the end, what ended up happening was that on live television, those people who were making the allegations, the top person, themselves admitted that that was just a false claim. So, please tell me that now we have the same situation. And I'd like to speak to my honorable friend from Pakistan People's Party, Mr. Kamal Khaira, that yes, in the event that the allegation was against the Prime Minister of Pakistan, I would agree with you that he should probably step down, as he made the same standard for Mr. Prime Minister Gilani. But in that case, it was against Prime Minister Gilani. In this case, as we've shown you again and again, and you yourself have admitted, it's not against the Prime Minister. So how the same standard applies?
You circumvented
the question. I'm not circumventing the question. And so what I'm telling you is that the civil-military relations that you heard Cyril and Mira talk about, every time the last 4 or 5 months are in order for a posting and transfer to take place, we decide that it's suddenly time to fix democracy and there's too much corruption. Starting from Mirza Aslam. Starting from Mirza Aslam. I can tell you each and every day and week and chapter. So here we are, 5 months down the road, suddenly democracy needs to get fixed and there's too much corruption. Where have we heard this before? So the point that you heard also the civil real politics as it was called by Musaddiq. So yeah, that would completely change the entire prospect of the system being able to, as Cyril was saying, create a system of continuity and evolutionary change and bring about from the whole period that passed, which Kamal Khaira explained very brilliantly, that we need to move forward to that democracy. So yes, the timing is important. Yes, the conditions are important. Yes, the background is important. When the last time we did the 35 Panchar in Gora Hospital, also then the posting and transfers were about to happen.
I would only like to say one thing which is very simple. If a motion is moved in the parliament that the Prime Minister has lost faith and he loses the way to vote to go.
इस वक्त का जिक्र दानियाल कर रहे हैं, उस वक्त हमने गवर्नमेंट के साथ, पार्लियामेंट के साथ खड़े हुए सारी जमातें खड़ी थी एक्सेप्ट पीके, और हमने ये कहा था कि उस वक्त का इस्तीफे का मुतालबा नहीं हो सकता, वो सिर्फ एलिगेशन है, मेयर एलिगेशन की बुनियाद पे आप इस्तीफा ना माने। इस वक्त एलिगेशन नहीं है, एक्सेप्टेंस। Your son has admitted, the documents are there, verified, not denied by the government. That's why we are saying this. दूसरी बात यह है कि जिस तरह कहा गया, वज़ीर आज़म साहब के बच्चों ने अगर कोई बात कंपनी बनाई है तो इलीगल नहीं है, हमने कब कहा है। लेकिन वो होती बेसिकली गलत काम के लिए है, वो टैक्स बचाने के लिए। हुक्मरानों के बच्चे तो अपने पैसे बाहर रख के, ऑफशोर कंपनीज में रख के, शेयर कंपनीज में रख के अपने टैक्स बचाएं और आम आदमी टैक्स दे। उसके बच्चे, यानी मैं भी उसमें शामिल हूँ, मेरे बच्चे तो जाके सरकारी अस्पताल में, प्राइवेट अस्पतालों में इलाज कराए, वो तो प्राइवेट स्कूलों में पढ़े, और आम आदमी के बच्चे को जो रोज टैक्स देता है, उसके बच्चे को मैं प्रॉपर स्कूल में लेकर साहब को इसलिए हम कह रहे हैं, बरतानवी वज़ीर आज़म पे इल्जाम लगा, उन्होंने जवाब ये दिया कि जनाब जिस दिन मैं वज़ीर आज़म बना था, मेरे शेयर मेरे वालिद के वक्त के थे, मुझे इनहेरिट हुए थे, लेकिन मैंने पहले वो शेयर बेचे फिर वज़ीर आज़म बना था। उनके साथ के ऊपर कोई एलिगेशन ऐसा नहीं था। तो इसके ऊपर बहुत सारी डिबेट है, और आखिरी बात मेरी ये है कि हाँ, एक सिस्टम क्रिएट करने की जरूरत है। हम रोज वज़ीर आज़म को कह रहे हैं कि वज़ीर आज़म साहब, हमने सीओडी में एक बात की थी, बहुत सारा काम हमने सीओडी में किया। आज मुल्क के अंदर जो कुछ सिस्टम चल रहा है, ये सीओडी मियां नवाज शरीफ और बेनजीर भुट्टो के दरमियान हुआ था, ये उसकी देन है। उस पे हमने एक कमीशन बनाने का भी वादा किया। लेकिन उस वक्त इफ्तिखार चौधरी साहब और कुछ मीडिया पर्सन्स हमारा इंतजाम कर रहे थे, इसलिए इंतजाम ने हमारा साथ नहीं दिया। हम आज भी कहते हैं कि हमारा वो अकाउंटेबिलिटी बिल कमीशन का आज भी पार्लियामान में मौजूद है, उसको ले आइए। जिस तरह आपने कंसोशिएशनल डिसीजन मेकिंग के तहत पार्लियामान से 18वीं तरमीम पास कराई थी, हमने एनएफसी किया था, मिलकर किया था, वो हमारा कल अकेले का नहीं था। उसी तरह अकाउंटेबिलिटी के ऊपर एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव बिल वेल डिबेटेड कंसेंसस के साथ ले आइए। फौज के साथ भी बात कीजिए, अदलिया के साथ भी बात कीजिए। ए लॉ फॉर ऑल एक्टर्स, फॉर ऑल सेक्टर्स, फॉर ऑल फैक्टर्स, वो ला ले आए इस मुल्क में।
I wanted to answer that part of your question. Prime Minister and his party enjoy or command a majority in the Parliament, so replacing him through a resignation, why would that make a difference? There is a basic principle of law that justice should not only be done, but also be seen to be done. And what I've been trying to say all through the 15 minutes I had, I was conscious of the fact that in a talk show we never get straight 15 minutes. And I did my best to maintain decorum. Wolf in sheep's clothing is a saying of English. That doesn't mean I believe the Prime Minister to be a particular animal or an object. And if I did so, I would not express it publicly. Clothing is just a saying, it's regular speech which says a person appears to be something, but he is in fact something else. Or like Shakespeare said in Macbeth, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. That doesn't mean I think of the man as a snake, but it's just a regular speech. The thing is that not just it won't be just a symbolic thing, but also a practically the kind of message it would send to all agencies and instrumentalities of the government, that he is not the incumbent Prime Minister. He has had to give up, and knowing his personality, which one knows through his track record. I have mentioned, I forgot to give the example of storming the Supreme Court and attacking it, and that was also his government in whose time this was all done. And what was done with judges and chief justices, what the tendencies are. So for the sitting Prime Minister to be there while this kind of an inquiry is going on, nobody who genuinely believes that it should be an impartial and one in which nobody interferes, or there's no fear factor, would not happen. And last but not least, there are several jurisdictions in this world, including ours, which employ the concept of guilty until proven innocent if a certain threshold is crossed. And we are at that threshold. It is already there in Section 14 of the National Accountability Ordinance of 1999. And what has been admitted so far, I think the burden should be on the Prime Minister and his family to establish that this is not the proceeds of crime, this is not the proceeds of violation of law, this is not the proceeds of corrupt practice or money laundering.
Are guilty, all of us and our children, unless proven guilty. Thank you very much.
डॉक्टर साहब सवाल करना चाहती है, आपको पता होना चाहिए कि पाकिस्तान के नेशनल अकाउंटेबिलिटी लॉ के तहत अगर आप एलिज हो जाते हैं, आप एलिगेशन आ जाता है, then you have to prove yourself innocent.
Isn't it wonderful that we are all celebrating that? One more round of applause.
So this is, as expected, this has been a brilliant debate, and I'd like to really thank our speakers. Thank the students who are responsible, the debating societies of Dhaka. In particular, Ayman Faisal.
यूनिवर्सिटी में स्टूडेंट्स के पास जाने का मौका मिलता है. Let me admit and say and appreciate that this was the best round I have ever seen.